Hey y'all, it's April. So a couple of months ago, I stumbled upon the Drunk Guys Book Club podcast. And so you know that spoke to everything in all of my little brains. So I reached out and the guys had Reba and I on as a guest. I'm not really sure what a smart decision that was, but the resulting content was pretty amazing. It's a little longer than our typical podcast, and I was going to split it up for you, but I figured y'all are grown, you can manage your own time. So, big thanks to the Drunk Guys Book Club podcast for supplying this edited version of today's broadcast. See you guys later.
This
Bye.
is gonna be your best podcast ever.
Epicurean, but OFC and pink lemonade's pretty damn good. It'll put your boat in the marsh. Jesus did not die so you could eat yellow number 5. Excitable.
The nose starts off gentle with noticeable sense of grain that takes shape in the form of fresh baked bread.
Ma'am, you're in the wrong podcast. Educated-ish. I have used the term overproof for so long without really knowing what it
constitutes.
Because for
Is
me,
there a definition officially?
welcome to Bitches and Bourbon.
Welcome to the Drunk Guys Book Club, where books aren't just for school, where book clubs aren't just for women, although we have some today. And this beer is going to stir up trouble.
I'm Mike.
I'm Nate.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm April from Bitches and Bourbon, here with, hey Reba, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing lovely. These guys let us into their house.
I'm so excited.
I think they're going to realize very soon they made big mistakes.
They got their hands full tonight.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Sounds like a real nightmare. I'm going to make a lot of horse puns. This week we are doing... The fuck are we reading again? Oh, yeah. All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy. I just finished it this afternoon. And Nate apparently is starting with a beer.
Okay, so this beer is a one we haven't had for a long time. It's from Off Color Brewing, which I have not seen in the stores for a long time. This beer is called Beer for Dealing with Your Family. Because right in the beginning, John... Right, that's his name? Mm-hmm. Right. It's John.
John
He
Grady
does
Cole.
not deal with his family. He just leaves. And then when he gets to Mexico and he doesn't deal with Alejandra's family very well. Anyway, this beer is beer for dealing with your family, although it's actually not beer. It's actually a 12% malt liquor. I think it's so strong they couldn't legally call it beer.
Because they just
I think they made the title and they like printed the cans and then they're like, we can't legally call this beer. Anyway, I'm going to try it.
I mean, I think like all the off-color ones are like beer for whatever. That's like
They have a lot of names.
like beer for pizza, table beer.
Oh my. Oh, okay. This is very strong. Woo.
Yeah, it's malt liquor, man.
Actually, I want to say it's really a barley wine. That's what it tastes like to me. It tastes almost like a Belgian ale. It has that like coriander flavor. Not what I was expecting.
You should
Quite strong, though.
put it in the appropriate servingware. Put it in a brown paper bag and drink out of it then. And you could see it'll really
I thought
hit
he was
the
going to say
palate better.
trash, but okay.
That was not what I was expecting, but it's pretty good.
It looks like a rather large serving as well.
It is.
It looks like half of a 40 to me.
So it's a 20.
That's what it looks like.
It might be a 20, isn't it?
I
The
think
20
it
ounce
is.
can?
I
Yeah.
think it's a 19.2
Pretty
ounce
good at
can.
this.
That's the new big... that's a
It's the
16
only math
ounce
that
can, I
matters.
think.
Yeah.
Oh, don't
Trying
big
to
is
your
see if it
can?
says.
don't look. It's just 4 ounces. Just drink it. You're fine. It's like a shot. Whatever. You'll be fine.
So Cormac McCarthy's All the Pretty Horses came out in 1992, and there's a shitty movie of it, but I don't remember. I watched it a long time ago. I think on an airplane or something.
Yeah,
And,
it was pretty shitty. It was Matt Damon, Penelope Cruz.
I think Billy Bob Thornton directed it.
It wasn't
Which is really
wasn't
random.
great.
And
So Sling Blade directed it?
I think
Is that
so.
the
Yes.
problem?
I was
Yeah.
going to say that should give you some
Wow, there were
insight there.
so many taters in the movie.
Couldn't have done that. He did the horse. It's like the whole thing. So John Grady Cole. The movie takes place in like 1949 or something.
49,
1950,
yes.
something like that. And he is a 16-year-old man boy because he is a man basically. Though now that I'm way older than that. I think, and I see 16-year-olds. I think they're babies. So I'm very just impressed that he was able to feed himself. But his grandfather dies. That's how it starts on the family ranch, and in Texas, in a place I don't know where. I don't know shit about Texas. And
San Angelo.
right.
Which is maybe a place in real life. I don't know.
It could be. With the Cormac McCarthy, there's nothing like an accidental detail, so that probably means something. But I don't know what this one does. And
It means Saint Angels.
so scholars are not sure what it means, but nobody knows. But then he wants to keep the ranch or the farm or whatever the fuck it is. But it's like through some convoluted lawyering, he finds out that his mom and dad are divorced, and that she's keeping the ranch and selling it, and he can't inherit it or something like that. And I bet he was really pissed at his mom for a second. He probably considered matricide, which is this imperial stout with almond paste, lactose, aged on Ecuadorian cacao, which to many Americans is Mexico, Madagascar, vanilla, and toasted coconut. Oh, and it's 15% alcohol, Nate. Suck that.
15.
Yeah, baby. 15.1.
Oh, of course, yeah. Who makes it?
Nightmare.
Oh, that does sound like a fucking
Horse jokes. So this is fucking amazing. I'm not going to remember the rest of the evening, but this is going to be great.
It's awfully early.
So he meets up with, what's the fucking name? Rollins?
Rollins. Lacey Rollins.
That is a fucking stripper name if I have ever heard one.
Okay, so we have to get a couple of things on the table before we go any further.
Lacey Rollins will dance on the table.
I love Lacey.
For the right amount of money.
Lacey is my favorite character in the book. I kind of think John Grady's a little bitch. And I know he's supposed to be like this romantic hero, and that's only if you've read the first one. If you read the full trilogy, you realize he's really not. Like, he never changes. He's very static. Lacey is one of my favorite characters that Cormac McCarthy has ever created. So we're going to have to go easy on Lacey. Just saying.
I'm just saying the person named Lacey often is easy. So
Fair enough. If we call him Rollins, will you feel better about that?
I'm just gonna. Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm thinking Henry Rollins.
Look how we did. Oh God.
I just think that name is absurd. Nothing. Cormac McCarthy anguishes over every syllable.
Lacey is short for Lace-A-Lot, which is one
Yeah.
of the knights. So
One of the less popular ones. Yeah.
I had not
I
heard
made
that
that
before.
up, but it could be true.
I
No,
love
I made
that.
that up right now.
He makes
Oh,
that
yeah,
shit up.
this
That
is
is
Jimmy
not
making
real.
shit up.
No. That is. I am going to argue that from now on. I love that.
There you go.
Because he has such big shoes, all those laces.
For fuck's sake.
Oh, it's just getting started.
I
He
love
hasn't
it.
even started
I love
drinking.
it. I'm going to need more liquor.
I was gonna say, are you out of Jameson?
No, yeah, I'm going to need more liquor. I didn't know.
So then they do the most lot. Well, first, then he goes to like watch his mom in a play or something.
Well, yeah, that's what pisses him off, right? Like, so his mom is never really there. He's like in love with his dad because his dad's like this war hero and they play chess and his mom's like never around. And then she takes like the one thing that he loves and she's like, no, because I'm going to be this actress. And he's like, the fuck is an actress? Like, that's not what real people do. Like, we have these people that have lived in our house forever and we're supposed to take care of them.
Responsibilities.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. And so then now Lacey and John Grady just have to saddle up their horses and try to get themselves killed in a Mexican prison. So,
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
The only
She's
logical
not only
move.
at a distant mother, but she's also like not in the book. They like don't have a conversation. It's really just kind of like, oh, and then he went to talk to his mother and his mother said, no, you can't have the ranch. But it's not like they actually talk. It's like she's very just distant
Yes.
and not there.
Yeah,
Well,
McCarthy's
that's part of, yeah, I was probably going to say the same thing as Cormac McCarthy writes about women about as much as anyone who wrote about women in the 1400s.
He writes about women as
Like,
much as he writes
just
about dinosaurs.
He doesn't have a lot of female characters in his book.
No, he doesn't. And that's one of the scholars will usually take him to task on that and call it misogyny. And I've done. First of all, I think that's complete bullshit. But what Cormac will what
McCarthy says is he finds women mysterious and he doesn't really understand them. So he's really careful. He would rather not write them than make them incorrect. But when he does make female characters, I think he makes them fairly strong when he finds a good one. The Duena is a great example of that. I know we haven't gotten that to that part in the plot yet. But the Duena is an amazingly strong female character that I think he does a fantastic job with.
This might be the book with the most female characters that actually have speaking parts.
Yeah, Suttree probably has a few, but I don't know. Child of God, obviously.
Child of God is a dark one.
Well, honestly, outside of all the pretty horses, name one that isn't.
Yeah, they're all pretty dark. This is the nicest
This was
one.
refreshing.
I think so too. Whenever somebody says I haven't read McCarthy, where should I start? I always tell them either start
Child of God.
No, no.
I mean, I've read all of his books. Nate and Mike have not read all of them. Do you guys know what Child of God is about?
Did the guy fuck a dead body or something?
It's the guy fucking a dead body. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw the.
But the body is a lady, so that's a female character.
Not a lot of dialogue from her, I imagine.
No. Very one-sided.
I can't imagine. I mean, how long is the book?
It's not very long. It's right there. You can grab
that makes
it.
sense. No,
Yeah,
that
it's
makes
not very-
sense that it's not very long.
Not a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
outside
I mean,
of outside of
the body
Suttree,
can't last that long.
Yeah, no. Outside of Suttree, they don't get. He doesn't write epic novels, right? Like they're usually to the point. He says what he has to say and he moves along. Except for the Orchard Keeper. The Orchard Keeper goes on for days in this weird Faulkner type. What the hell is going on right now? But anyway.
Yeah, I read it and I couldn't tell you what it was about.
Well, I'll tell
read
you
a lot
what.
of his books
Schedule
you
one
can
for
check
that.
it
We'll
out.
come back and talk about it. I'll tell you all about it. That one's one of my favorites.
Okay.
So, okay, this book. So, John is like, well, clearly there's nothing for me here on this ranch because it's just going to get sold, like any day now. So I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to take a horse because he loves horses, and he and his friend, who was also 16 or 17, they're just going to go and they're going to ride south. They're going to ride to Mexico and find the real West because you can't have
In
a
the
real
South.
West. Yeah, you can't have a real West in the West anymore.
That's like the fucking hipsterest thing ever. Like, no, the real West is South.
South is the new West. But when you say they're gonna be riding on these horses a long time, they're gonna have to like camp out overnight, and they're gonna have to have breakfast. What do you think they're gonna have breakfast of?
Oh man, I almost brought a beer for that.
Because I think that it didn't say it.
I'm
but
going with an
I'm
Irish
sure
coffee. I don't know about y'all, but that's what
Well,
I'm
I
having
think-
for breakfast.
They're gonna have French toast by campfire.
I think we go. I think we pair wonderfully together. Cheers.
Yeah. Sláinte. This is written in cursive and in white, so I can't read it. What the fuck? I think it's a stout. Timber ales. How strong? I can't read it.
If they make beer in a little can like that these days, it is a fucking
The percentage
big
is
beer.
probably in English.
Lordy. It's good. I like it. Does that say 12%? I'm going to turn on the light.
12% Brewing Company distributes timber ales. That's confusing.
I'm going to look it up on the internet because I can't look at the side of the can after I open it up because that's not how physics works. It feels strong. I can feel it. Oh, yeah. No, that's the wrong number. 6%. Fuck. I'm weak. Never mind.
Oops. Missed the
I
mark.
saw the 12. I was like, yeah, 12%. I was like, no, that's 12 ounces. I'm done. But it does taste vaguely of French toast and campfire. It burns a little, but it's nice. And I'm sure that they eat that constantly on the road because they just have saddlebags full of wet eggs that they dip the bread into as they go.
Got eggs and milk. That's exactly what they bring with them.
The sun keeps it constantly boiling so they can keep making French toast.
Yeah, they're
know a lot about the
saddlebags.
desert.
They're doing like French toast sous vide in their bags. That's what
Yes.
just-
That's the best way to do it. Keeps it nice and wet.
I like French toast sous vide is the best band name. So they also are just chain smoking relentlessly because it was the good old days of America.
Well, they're going to be dead by 35.
Yeah, except
Oh,
for
absolutely.
No, yeah, you're right. No, that's right. I'm thinking of Billy Parham in the trilogy. Sorry, he doesn't smoke at all. And Cormac McCarthy makes a really big deal about the fact that Billy doesn't smoke ever
Because everybody else does.
because everybody else does.
It's probably a life expectancy joke or irony.
Because he does live longer than almost any of the male characters that McCarthy's ever created, ever.
Except the judge, who lives
The judge will never die.
That book gave me nightmares. He's talking about Blood Meridian right now. That book gave me nightmares. That's when I realized that Cormac McCarthy never met a baby he didn't want to put over a fire. And, like, I don't even know how you write stuff like that on a regular basis, but he absolutely does, which makes me
a lot of barbecue restaurants.
It's terrible. Like, it's awful. Like, there's a baby. Where is it? Probably on a spit. And I'm like, are we serious right now?
Well,
But
The
he
road
doesn't.
has a good amount of babies on its spit too, yeah. But the judge looks like a baby, so he picked his greatest nightmare is a 7-foot tall baby.
He's
And
the forever baby.
yeah, he's got like whatever that disease is from Jack with Robin Williams, where you don't age, like progeria.
I was going to say quadrophenia, but that's a Who album.
That's different.
Because he ages 4 times as fast. That's quadrophenia.
Yeah.
So they wander into Mexico, looking for shit to do, and
Which does happen a lot.
That does, yeah, that's what you do. And then they meet a guy whose name sounds like an old-timey sound effect, Blevins, and he is, like, younger than them. They're like, well, this is a child.
Yeah, he's
And
what,
he has
14?
That he claims to be, so who knows? And this kid has a really nice horse, because, they could recognize that in these days. They hadn't discovered internet porn yet. So they're like, oh, man, I just know a shitload about horses. And he's like,
you sure
Rollins.
got a nice buyer.
Lacey's like, fuck this kid. This guy sucks. I hate his guts. Almost irrationally so. And John Grady Cole is like, nah. He's just like laconic. He's just like, whatever. That's how all the characters always talk in Cormac McCarthy books. They just say 78% of what they need to say to have a human conversation. And they just kind of stop. And it's like, yep, summer and horses coming here. He lit a cigarette, and that just goes on like that for pages at a time. So then there's this like weird Three's Company thing happening, but it's Six Company because they have horses. And then they're wandering around, and this is going on at length. I don't really know what the point was, except eventually, through a fucking ridiculous scenario, the kid, the Blevins, loses his horse and all of his clothes.
Oh, because he's afraid of lightning. All of his family has died from like lightning strikes. And so when the storm comes, he's like,
He's
holy
descended from
shit,
Ben
I'm going
Franklin,
to
yeah.
die. And he like takes off and gets naked because he's worried that like the shit on his clothes is going to like attract the lightning. So he runs off
He's
like a
they're-
fucking child. Oh, wait.
But they're like,
he is a
"Dude,
child.
you're not going to outrun a fucking thunderstorm, dude." He's like, I got to try. I have to try.
I think you just
And-
summed up Blevins' whole character arc, but I have to try, right?
And Rollins is like, let him cook. I fucking hate that kid. I hope he dies.
So this book is a Western, and it's really like Cormac
Southern.
McCarthy trying to like not just do a Western, because that's like kind of all his books, but he's, trying to make a Western into art. Well, it just so happened that in college I had to read The Virginian by Owen Wister, which came out in like 1901, and is kind of like the first Western novel. It didn't completely invent like the myth of the West. Came out in 1901 and is dedicated to his friend Teddy Roosevelt, and it takes place in the 1880s. But like, there's definitely like a theme in the book, if I remember, is like the West is for strong men, and the men that are just too weak just won't survive. They just won't make it. And this is exactly what I thought about when I read this scene about Blevins, because it's like, well, Rollins and Grady, they're John Grady, they're like so tough, like men, even though they're children. But this kid, he's a dumbass, and he's like, no, the lightning, oh no. And then he like climbs a tree. No, he gets under a tree. He takes off all his clothes because it might be metal like snaps on his, anyway, just takes off all his clothes, lets the horse just run away. That's going to be a problem later. And then lets all his stuff get washed away in the rainstorm. And it's just like, he's just too weak. He's just not going to make it.
Well, I think Blevins is he's kind of a hyper John Grady, right? So you have John Grady, who is this idealist who lives by this code, and it really doesn't matter if the code makes sense, right? it just doesn't matter. He's going to do what he thinks is the right thing, even if it's completely fucking ridiculous. And Blevins is kind of that to the nth degree, right? Because he's so young and he doesn't understand that these things need a modicum of mediation, right? Like there has to be some type of, what does Lacey say? Lacey says, I know there's always a decision before things go wrong. And I always knew when I made it. Right? Like there's this point where we decide something and you can never go back from there. Yeah. And once we do that, and he tells him when he talks about Blevins and going to get the horse, he says, this is that moment. Like if we do that, there's no coming back from this. And John Grady says, well, I just have to. And he goes, I knew you were going to say that. So just let's go. And I think that's kind of like the crux of the book is John Grady saying, I have to do these things, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't make any sense, and all these people are telling me it doesn't make any sense. I think it's just, I think what McCarthy is trying, what he always does is when man tries to overcome nature or when man tries to exert his hubris over the things that are going on, these are the bad things that happen. So you have Mexico, who McCarthy is kind of romanticized as this uncharted frontier, and they go into Mexico to kind of like regain this sense of what John Grady feels like he's lost with the loss of his ranch. And you can't do that. Like you can't move into a place that you don't know and expect people to do things according to your own will just because you think that's the way it should be. And I think that Blevins is kind of, if you miss that with John Grady, McCarthy's going to make sure you don't miss it when Blevins does it, because Blevins is he's so far into that kind of idea that he's going to make sure that you understand that this is a thing where when you think that your own ideas trump everything else, bad shit happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he lacks all basic competencies besides being real good at shooting things.
He's real good at shooting.
And stealing horses.
And stealing horses.
Because clearly that horse, or at least it's heavily implied that horse he's riding, like, that can't be his horse. A kid that dumb can't have a horse that nice. It just, it just can't happen. So it must have been stolen the first time. But then the big thing is that in the lightning storm, all of his stuff gets washed away, and his horse runs off. And then they eventually, after a day or so, 2 days, after a little bit of time, they find his horse. Somebody else has got it. And then Blevins is like, well, I have to steal it back. It's my
can we not
horse.
Gloss over when the team of Mexicans offered to buy him. It's like, what is happening right now? And they're like, how much for the kid? And Rollins like, well, let's hear him out.
McCarthy is the author that, more than any other author, will teach you the word catamite and then use it over and over again and make you sorry you ever learned that word.
Well, isn't catamite what Australians put on toast?
Yes.
But I did learn that word from him. The only other time you'll see it is in a fucking book about ancient Rome. or the first sentence of Earthly Powers by William Golding has the word catamite in it.
There you go.
Weird trivia, I know. But yeah, so the team of Mexicans were like, let's buy that kid, and don't worry what happens. And Grady's like, maybe the exchange rate isn't really great to do it right now, so they don't sell him. They keep him out of boy sex slavery, and
they might have eaten him.
That was so nice of them.
That was when Rollins really was pissed. He's like, this was the decision that we can't go back from.
No turning back.
I could have gotten 2 packs of cigarettes for that kid's sweet ass.
I missed the mark.
Jesus, fuck Cole. This was my chance.
So, in the middle of the night, Blevins and John and Rollins, they go and they're going to try and steal this horse back. And they do. And then finally, it's about 100 pages in, and there's actually some action. It's amazing. First time. And then after this part, there's actually a lot of stuff that happens. But up until here, it's kind of like about 100 pages, and it's the first time something exciting happens.
So I should.
It was like an entirely different book. Pages. You kind of needed it, but little bit, yeah. So they there's this wild chase through the night where Blevins goes one way, and then Rollins and John go a different way, and they're riding off in a different direction. They're we're just trying to escape because Blevins says, "No, I'll try and lead them up this way. They're after me." And so they do, and they kind of hide through the night, and then they have no food, and they kill a deer, and they don't see Blevins again. They think they go a couple days, and they think to leave the trail. Or they let the people trying to follow them are probably not following them anymore, and so they're oh well, fuck him, he's gone now. Great, if only that was true. But anyway, they and then so you get to the second part of the novel where they get to a ranch. In Mexico, where John Grady can finally find all his pretty horses, and he shows that he can do all this amazing horse things.
Who runs that ranch? Nathan, who runs the ranch? He's like a fancy guy. He's a Don.
Oh, you mean Don Hector? I thought you were going to say Dwayne Alfonso.
No. The guy who owns
that's the Fonza's full name is Dwayne Alfonso.
Alfonso Rocha. That's who I thought you were going to say run the ranch.
Well, who runs the ranch? Business-wise, I guess would be
it's Don Hector.
Rich guy.
I'm just throwing in the chick. I'm just throwing in the chick vote.
No, there's definitely an argument to be made there, but he is a fancy rich guy, and I think sometimes people might even call him a rhinestone rancher.
He is very fancy.
Can I just say I love you guys?
And ales. This
is
what the fuck is
Nate's tired of it after 5 years, but it's good for him to be reminded that it's endearing what we do.
People like stupid shit.
He's also is he the haciendado? There's too much. I never took Spanish.
Haciendado.
He's the haciendado. I was I guess
which
it's
is Spanish for
guy.
hacienda daddy.
Oh, the haciendaddy, of course.
What the fuck is this? This is a sour apple sour ale. I don't know. Who knows?
Must be.
It tastes like fucking apples. Lord. It tastes like sour apple candy, which is something you don't want to drink a lot of. I can feel my diabetes growing.
I don't think anyone wants to drink candy.
Oh, no, we absolutely did in our 20s. You guys didn't
Zimas
do
with
that?
Jolly Ranchers.
Oh, yeah. Y'all didn't do that?
Ooh. It's interesting. This is not beer. But damn, I don't like apple juice. It always kind of reminded me of pee. Not the flavor. I don't know what apple juice tastes like. But yeah,
it does.
It's fine.
Like,
It's not quite. What if I combined it with the French toast? No, I'll do that later.
That is the
Anyway.
love that dare not speak its name. So the haciendaddy.
Haciendaddy.
That is
That's
is
Spanish.
what ladies call 'em.
I took Spanish a little bit, so I know that much of it.
Yeah, there was a lot of Spanish in this book, and it just assumed you also speak Spanish.
He does that in a lot of books of his, and he's like, well, fucking learn it. I don't
He's
care.
like a dick that just came back from a semester abroad. He's just
Yeah, because
gonna
here's the
just
real
use
truth.
that.
A lot of his Spanish isn't quite right.
Is that
Well, he's
right?
from
Oh.
Connecticut, so I'm not surprised.
No, he's not.
Yeah. Isn't he?
No, he's.
I think he's from Texas or somewhere down
Tennessee.
there.
He's from Tennessee.
Okay.
Well, I mean, they did move. Like when they were young. When he was young, his dad was an attorney for the TVA. So, like, they did move to Tennessee when he was super, super young, and then he got real pissed off with his dad. It's where the Orchard Keeper comes from because of the way his dad was like the TVA guy, and then he moved.
McCarthy was
west.
born in Providence, Rhode
Yeah,
Island.
But he moved at age
Yes.
4 to
Yes,
Tennessee.
which also
the
is
Connecticut of New
which
England.
is also not Connecticut.
It's a fucking lot closer than Tennessee is, though.
But that's where he grew up. I mean, Tennessee is where he grew up.
Yes. But he also probably didn't learn Spanish real good.
Probably not.
I don't know if Knoxville, Tennessee is known for its Spanish speakers.
No.
No.
No, you just have
If you
to.
took Spanish for a little bit, it's usually good enough to get the gist of what they're talking about.
Yeah,
because
and that's
it's
I think that's kind
pretty-
of what McCarthy
yeah.
did, right? Like his Spanish, like you get it. It's only if you're a fluent speaker where you're looking at it going, well, that's not quite right.
If not, then GGIB.
Yeah, Google it, bitch. You're fine.
They didn't have
They
Google when he
do-
wrote this.
Yeah,
so he
translate
just
will
like,
work,
Fuck
though.
it. I'll wing it.
It's
I'll
close
wing it.
enough. It's close enough.
But they do enough of like the Chewbacca or Lassie stuff where somebody says Spanish and they're like, "What? You mean there's a horse?" And they just say it, like, and you're, "Oh, thanks, dumb character, for helping me out right now."
He doesn't completely leave you hanging on it.
Yeah, I just figured if it really mattered, I'll figure it out later.
There will be some piece to put it together.
But it definitely felt like someone was like, "Oh, I've just been." I was in where would he be that he could say, I was in Barcelona for the last 6 months. I'm so used to thinking in Spanish. I forget. I forget not everyone does. Like that kind of shit. Like that's what it felt like.
Yes.
All this food is so big. Can't I just have a tapas?
I would just like un tapas.
Indeed.
Por favor.
Tequila, that's what we should be drinking.
Yeah.
I was actually
mezcal.
at just yesterday. We went out for drinks at work for Christmas. And it was at a Mexican place, and this coworker of mine who's Chinese American, she just like starts busting out Spanish on the waiter guy, and she was like, "Mi amor, blah, 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 blah." And we're like, "Holy shit, I didn't know you spoke Spanish." She's like, "Oh, un poquito." And then she was like, "But I switched back to English because I couldn't remember the word for tequila." And I was like, "I'm pretty sure
It's just tequila.
that's their word." It's like, so, nice try, nerd.
So anyway, he gets to the hacienda and he's having a great time because he can finally
Well, he's
play
proven
with his
that
horses.
he is the horse
all
whisperer.
his little horses.
Pretty.
And so he so he gets there and he's like, "Yeah, I'm pretty good with horses." And they're like, "Oh, okay. How about all these wild horses?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll take a look." And then he's like, "You know what? I can probably like train those horses and break those horses." And he's like, "Yeah, sure." Because he's got that animal instinct, or because he's a man of the wild.
He saw the horse whisperer was Robert Redford.
Yeah.
Yes.
I could do that. You just whisper shit to them, they've become your friend. That's science. That's animal science.
You say "yah" a lot around them, and they just get in line. And they have like a marathon, 36-hour horse fest, which is not Mr. Hands. And then they raise every horse. Every horse is beaten. They've conquered the entire tribe of horses, or whatever a group of horses is called.
It's a gaggle.
A gaggle of horses.
The
gaggle
murder
of
of horses. Yeah, that's it.
That's what a glue factory is.
And he, anyway, so he does all of this in like a day and a half. And he's just like, "Oh, look, I am the master of these horses." And like, that's pretty good. And then he sees the girl riding a beautiful Spanish horse. He's immediately like, "Wow, what's her name?" And so then that's Alejandra, who says almost nothing, especially at first. Like, pretty much says almost nothing in the book, but and he's very interested in her. And she has blue eyes, which I guess means she's partially white.
It means
Or is
she's
that-
mostly of European descent and not what current Mexicans would say only racist words for, which is people who are more of mixed descent. But it is a thing in Mexico, especially, where people that are more clearly just of Spanish descent are of a higher class and stature than the mixed breeds, as they would say, and the lowest, the Indians.
Well, I'm glad to see we didn't just invent that shit.
Yeah,
Fucking
they're
Mexicans taking our racism too and our jobs. Jesus.
Plenty to go around.
But yeah, he's like, I need to go to Mexico where I can be free and find a nice white girl. That's his hero's journey. He's like, I have an impossible quest.
Does go to the underworld. Yeah. Hero's journey. Totally.
That is the south of the earth.
Where's the
So-
underworld, Nate? South.
It's south.
The underworld. Yes.
All the way
exactly.
south.
I meant he's going to prison. That's
That too.
but
That's when everything goes south for him. That's different.
So many metaphors.
meets Alejandra and he's like, "Oh, aren't you so amazing?"
She's
And
really
then
hot and rides horses. It's just his thing.
the only two things he cares about.
It's second only to banging a centaur.
Doesn't that mean something different today in today's internet culture?
What?
That was the most random shit. Like, if I had not just been like if I had not just been with my family doing like a Harry Potter marathon, that would have been random. But now that he said it, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's a very
I just
interesting.
watched the new
that's a very
Percy
interesting
Jackson.
idea.
We actually just read Percy Jackson
Banging
last
centaurs.
week. Just like last week. So
Who knew?
Someone has got to do it. I guess other centaurs usually.
Centaurs need love too.
Of course.
That's an 80s song, I think.
Yeah, that sticks.
yeah, that would make sense. Yeah. So anyway, are immediately very interested in each other and start banging like almost right away. Like there's very little romance, and they get right to it. But she's of course still a teenager, even though she might be 18 instead of 16. But she's still a teenager, and they have to be secret about it. She
Also, because she's rich.
Well, yes, she's she's like the only daughter of this like rich family, and she's a most eligible female like in the hacienda, and she sneaks out to the barn like in the middle of the night so they can fuck like every night for a week. But then she has to go back to Mexico City because she's there in boarding school. And so he's like, what? And like, what are we gonna do? He's like, I don't know. And then she has to leave. She goes back to Mexico, and then immediately, like next morning, practically, he wakes up and there's somebody with a gun pointing it right at him. It's like, get up, and it's the police. It's the Mexican law enforcement. I forget what they were called.
I think it's revealed later that we're not really sure if they were actual cops or not. They were something vaguely legal, but maybe borderline.
Yeah. So John and Rollins, they get arrested.
Are we breezing past like the pool game and the chess game?
Oh, right. Did they
No,
do
we
that
frequently
chess
miss
game
things
now?
and go
oh
back
yeah,
because
oh
we
yeah,
forget.
we absolutely do that.
Yeah, you just breeze because like those are pivotal moments in the book, right?
Yeah. We breeze through important things constantly and be like, oh, right, we forgot.
Yeah, because like the pool game. So
Please tell us.
So first, he has the pool game with Don Hector, and Don Hector takes him into this room, and it's the sanctuary. It was like the chapel in the house, and he was supposed to have the priest come in and like unbless it and deconsecrate it, and he was like, Alfonso knows about these things, but I don't know why we have to do that. And John Grady like never gets a shot. Don Hector runs the table on John Grady while he's telling him that yes, he should let Alejandra go off to school, and this is a different country, and Mexico is not America, and you can't do the things here that you did there. And it's an idea about French thinking, and French thinking messes things up. And you have to live in the country that you're in. And shortly thereafter, Alfonso invites him to play chess, and the chess game
Before we get to the chess match, can I ask?
Yes.
Is it a metaphor that he goes to the pool hall in the chapel and he doesn't get a shot in, but he does desecrate his other chapel with his
exactly. I think you're absolutely right. I think that if we're talking about if you take the chapel and you make that like a metaphor for Alejandra, I think it's a great analogy. I think it's a great
balls. Got
thing.
a lot of shots in.
A lot of shots. And I think that's one of the things that are missed too, because you're absolutely right. Because like Nate was talking about how she goes there every night. And as a woman, you know what your cycle is, right? And so going there all the time for like 9 nights, the chance of pregnancy is ridiculous at that point, right? Because women, we only get like 4 days of sanity. That's all we get. Like our cycle makes us like fucking crazy.
Is that a lifetime number?
Yeah, maybe. But it's definitively in the cycle, right? So what she does is very dangerous, mostly because in 1949, haciendas like that, big ranches like that, are almost non-existent because of the war that's going on there and the way that the government has kind of pulled those things apart. It is an actual historical ranch. It did actually exist, which made it very rare, which makes Don Hector's protectiveness of it even more understandable, right? So yes, I think that when he talks about the chapel and the consecration, I think he's definitively trying to tell John Grady there are some things in Mexico that are sacred and you don't get to defile those things. And John Grady never has a shot, right? Ever, because Don Hector is going to make sure of that. At least he thinks he's going to, but he really can't, because in 1949 Mexico, there's only two ways, really, that honor is protected. And one of those is through legislative means, public means, and that's not really available to elite women like Alejandra. You can't take him to court. So working class women in Mexico during that time, what happened was if they had a man they wanted to marry and their families were like, no, you're not marrying him, they would just have sex. And then the woman would sue the man for defaming her honor, right? Taking her virginity. And then the court would go, oh, well, the only way to fix it is to marry him. And she was like, oh, no, not marry him. And then they would get married.
If I have to.
Oh, my God. Like, oh, woe is me. And that's what they would do. For elite women, especially for somebody like Don Hector, who was trying to protect this hacienda, that's not available. He can't do that. And he can't do a duel, which was the private way to do that, because then you call Alejandra's virginity into question, which he also cannot do because he needs her marriageable. So he can't do anything. So that's when Alfonso calls him in for the chess match, which is also very interesting because women didn't play chess in 1949. Pool halls and chess parlors were a male-dominated field. Women didn't go there. So the fact that Alfonso could even play chess was very interesting. And that she loses the first two games, it's also very interesting. The chess board is beautiful because it's made of like elk and elephant, which is like the 5-bid game in Africa. So her power is primal. And she tries to tell John Grady, you can't do these things. Like, this is not, it's okay for men. Women cannot regain their honor. That's what she tells him. Like, this is not ever going to work. And now let me beat you with this King's Own opening and put you to bed and send you on your way. So those two games are very important because that's when John Grady gets all the information he's ever needed. And McCarthy is telling us this is a different place. Like, John Grady has entered into a place where his idealism doesn't work.
As opposed to Texas, where there are no laws.
Right. Well, at the very
in a way,
yeah,
it's
you're absolutely right.
To do what you want, land of America. It was like, there's fucking rules here, kid.
Correct, because we saw that with his mom, right? His mom was like, oh, fuck you. I'm going to sell it because I want to go be an actress. And then the little girl John Grady was dating was like, I'm not dating you anymore because I want to date this other guy because he has a car. So it's completely different here than it is there. And John Grady had all the information and they made sure that he had it and he just didn't care. Because what did John Grady say? He said, this isn't fair. And Duana says, it's not about fair. In these matters, I get to say. I get to say what happens.
Well, it is interesting to contrast with the Texas idea that he comes from is you could make whatever destiny you want if you're like going to go bust your ass and do it. As opposed to what he finds there at the hacienda is there's no choice for you, basically. Right? So Alejandra's destiny is set for her, as much as she might have some rolls in the hay in the barn. And but here's my question about this kind of thing in a book. I don't fucking know all this about Mexico. Am I supposed to? Like, is that Cormac McCarthy's like, I expect you to know a cultural history of Mexico through the 1950s to read my book.
Yeah, I really think he does. I really think he does.
Kind of a literature snob writer.
Yeah,
That's
no,
a dick
he really
move.
was. And because, like, when McCarthy associated with people, he rarely associated with other authors. He rarely associated with other writers. When he moved to New Mexico, it was mostly scientists and astronomers and those kind of folks that he associated with. And so, yeah, he's not a writer who's going to give that background to you. Like, he expects you to know, or if not know, he expects you to go, this is fucking weird, and then go look for it, because he's not, I don't think he ever kind of serves it up for you. He's a hard guy to read, for sure.
You're never gonna hold your hand.
Ever. He's not even going to give you quotation marks. Like, you just, like, when you read him, like, his punctuation, he's like, fuck you, punctuation. I do what I want to do, right? Like, he's never going to give that to you.
Yeah, I said it before on episodes we've done for him. I think that's a fucking dick move. I think it's obnoxious. He's like, I am above quotation marks. Mechanics do not apply to me. Which physicists will tell you you can't disobey the laws of fucking mechanics.
Well, and I guess when you're the kind of writer who gives two shits about money and you're just going to write what you're going to write, because he lived in almost complete poverty for most of his life, right? I think his first wife left him. She goes, we lived in a barn. She goes, we never had money. So
Well, I think his first two marriages were before he made any money. And I think it's interesting you said earlier the guy never writes about women because he doesn't understand them. He got divorced 3 times, so he clearly didn't know much about women.
no.
Nor does it sound like he made much effort to.
He didn't really try. And he's just like, I have to create, honey. Please. I need to think about Mexico in 1949. You handle those diapers.
Makes me think of the book that we're talking about doing of the can you put it together or whatever?
Cain's
like
Jawbone.
Yeah, where there's no punctuation, there's
Yeah.
no
Oh.
anything.
A friend of mine gave that to me. It's like an unsolvable riddle.
Yeah,
Yes.
we
Haven't
have
read
it. Our book club's we keep saying we're gonna tackle it, and nobody's really gotten the cojones up to do it because we got it.
It's never been solved, right?
No, it
Ever?
has. It has
Okay.
once or twice, I think.
So Google it and then call it a night.
No,
No.
that's cheating.
That was part of the rules.
That's part of the
we
rules.
were going to participate. No Googling anything.
Can I ask Jeeves?
No,
That's the same
and that you
thing.
know that means we're the same age, and I love that about you.
That's how we learned things in the olden times. Am I pregnant, Jeeves?
So we recently read a bunch of the books that were nominated for the Booker Prize. We actually read almost all of them. And there were a number of them that didn't use quotation marks, like Cormac McCarthy. So fuck him. It's spreading. The disease is spreading. And one of them was like the one that won, Prophet Song, where it's like, okay, at least McCarthy will start a new paragraph when a new person is speaking and will still go like he said. However, this other book, Prophet Song, doesn't even do that. People have conversations mid-paragraph, 2 different people speaking. There's no quotation marks. It's just like, you just have to follow along and be like, oh, that's somebody speaking now. Oh, that's another person speaking now.
Don't get sidetracked.
It was impossible to skim, was my criticism. Okay, so back to All the Pretty Horses. So he gets arrested.
Yeah, my
So he-
apologies.
he-
I couldn't.
He talks to...
couldn't let us skip
you-
it.
Those were,
Couldn't let us
those
skip
were
it.
very important parts. You're right. So he has the chess game, the pool game, and the chess game, and he still fucks Alejandra because he's going to
in
do what
the
he
corner-
wants.
Corner pocket,
Sunk that 8.
I don't know.
And
It's
then-
probably 5.5, but whatever.
Don't be a
it's about
hater.
girth.
Ocean and ocean.
You never know who's going to get one. So he gets arrested. He and Rollins get arrested, and then they immediately get taken to this jail. I can't remember if they have the interrogation first. No, they go to the jail and they see that their old friends, that dumbass Blevins is there, and Blevins has clearly gotten arrested and basically said, oh yeah, those other 2 guys, you need to look for them too. And that's why all 3 of them are there. And there's this like interrogation scene, and John Grady, he's still, because he's that like Western guy with the code of honor, I'm just going to tell the truth. I'm not even going to explain myself to make myself look better. I'm just going to tell it like it is, just like it happened. And so they all are just like, okay, now you're going to jail. Have fun, guys. And then they won't even like help themselves. And so then they're in this Mexican jail, which all
before
they seem
they get to
do
jail,
is fight.
some other shit happens.
Yeah,
because
yeah, on the way
they're
to the
in
jail.
they're in the truck getting brought to jail, and then they take Blevins out of the car on the way to the jail, and they just shoot him in the head in the woods, and then keep driving.
Except for when they're when they're dragging Blevins off. It is heartbreaking, right? Because Blevins is
he's a
like
little kid.
Yeah, he's a child, right? And Blevins knows there's nothing he can do. There's nothing John Grady can do. There's nothing Lacey can do. So he pulls off his boot and he throws them like the last bit of money he has, which becomes very important in the Mexican jail. But that's like Blevins' sacrifice, because the truth is, I don't think Blevins ratted them out. I really don't. And I think that because of the scene when Lacey and John Grady are on the mountain and they're by the fire and they hear the dogs and they're like, oh God, is Hector coming for us because he knows about you and Alejandra? And then it just goes away. Like, I think Hector knows about them. He knows there's this story about this kid who stole this horse, and there was 2 other white guys with him. And I think Hector tells the police, hey, I got these 2 white guys on my ranch. I think that's them. I don't think Blevins ever ratted them out. I really don't. I really don't.
I mean, later on when he's talking to Alejandra, when they meet back up again, she's like, I told my dad what happened. And it's like, and he called the cops on us. It's like, she's like, yeah, he did.
Yeah,
my bad.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't think Blevins ratted him out.
Yeah, I mean, they knew there were three white guys who did it,
and then,
or who were nearby, and there's no one else,
right? And they just happened up on the ranch,
Mexico,
so it must be these people, must be these guys. And even if it's not, Don Hector needs a way to regain his daughter's honor, and this is the best way to do it. So even if it isn't them, we're gonna make it them. But it just so happened that it was.
Blevins has that tattoo across his neck that says "Snitches get stitches." He would not betray that.
Right? Exactly. But that scene for me was one of the hardest ones in the book, because you see John Grady wanting to do something, and even Lacey, as strong as he's been against Blevins in the whole book, even when this thing happens, Lacey's like, oh my God, like, how are they just going to drag him out in the woods and kill him? And then that's exactly what they do. But before they do, Blevins is like, here, take this money. Like, it's the best I can do for you. I can't do anything else.
So then now they're just in Mexican jail, which all they seem to do is just knife fights all day. They just, that's all they do. And one guy, don't remember his name, is like, hey,
Perez,
I can help you out, but it's going to cost you some money. I'll be your protector. And they're like, well, we don't have any money, so sorry. Or more, it's actually not just that. It's John's being like, I'm a man, I'm strong. And so he gets into a fight, I forget how, and he stabs a guy and kills him.
But the guy stabs the fuck out of him too. So
well, yeah, because
Right,
the guy
they both
had
get
been hired. The guy had been hired to kill John Grady, and John Grady had used the last money that Blevins had given him to buy the knife.
Always be prepared.
Always be, yeah. A shank in prison is something you always need. Don't ask me how I know.
That's worth a merit badge.
So he spends some time in the infirmary, and he after he kills the guy, but he's also been stabbed, but then eventually, he's not completely healed or anything. But then the captain comes, or some dude says like, "Oh, hey, you're free. Get the fuck out right now. Get out of here." And it's like, what just happened? Turns out,
Good behavior.
Alejandra's aunt. Time off for good behavior, definitely. We were trying to get rid of that guy. You did us a favor. No, that's
He kept
not
pooping in the sink. Real dick.
Alejandra's aunt bailed them out. Literally paid off the authorities to get them both out, to get John and Rollins out of prison. Blevins is dead already, so doesn't help him. But they get him out of prison. And they get their stitches taken out and manage to get back to the hacienda after a while. And
Rollins doesn't. Rollins like,
actually, I'm going.
I fucking hate this place.
Fuck Mexico.
Rollins is like, where's the nearest oil field? Like, I always thought that was the better idea. I'm going the fuck home.
I just spent weeks getting drilled. I think I'll do it myself now.
Jimmy, that's an interesting thing you just said. Because there is some debate.
It's all dick stuff.
Yeah, well, no, I love a great dick joke. But there is some debate when they first bring the guys in for questioning, and they take Lacey first. And then Lacey comes back, and he doesn't want to tell John Grady about all the things that happened to him. There is a very small sector of scholarship that suggests that that Lacey was raped while he was in prison. I don't see it.
I mean, it could definitely be the case, but there's no real like, aha, this is what they. You could really go either way, but it's probably speculation.
I would agree. I would agree. But since you made the joke, I thought we would.
Oh yeah, gonna make the joke, of course.
I thought that I would ask what you thought about that because I agree. I didn't necessarily see it either. I don't know that I would argue against it because McCarthy is known for his very dark.
He's not against.
Correct.
Correct. That happening, since he uses the phrase "catamite" so often.
Yeah, but Lacey wasn't dead, so maybe Lacey wasn't good fuck material.
This is a topic to be explored in a PhD dissertation of like Los Oz, the unspoken butt sex in Cormac McCarthy's prison scenes, and that would be. We've all seen prison movies. I've seen I don't know what Oz is in Spanish, but I think it's Los Oz.
Os.
Oh, Os. It's Os. But yeah, you could definitely write a paper on that, and no one will. You just like doesn't say it didn't happen.
You don't have evidence to dispute it.
That's it. That's Jimmy's go-to line. It doesn't say it didn't happen in the book, so there you go. But what else would he be not saying? Oh, I don't want to tell you about the tickles. Like, what did he not? Like, what is the thing he's protecting them from?
Yeah,
They said such mean things. Like what?
I don't know.
Maybe it's just not the focus of.
No, I don't know. I think that McCarthy is as subtle as he is about some things. I think that if we were supposed to have understood that Lacey was raped, I really think that he would have given us just a tinky bit more
To make
That's
it more
a terrible.
definitive.
Oh my God, that was a.
Just a tip.
Yeah, just the tip. I'm so sorry. That's awful. That's terrible. But I really do think that McCarthy would have given us just something a little bit else other than Lacey coming back and saying, you don't know how terrible this is going to be. Because I always have to remember, like, I think Jimmy said it earlier in the show when we were talking about, we have to remember that they're children. It's so easy when we get these characterizations of Lacey and John Grady. They seem so much older than what they are. And in truth, we're talking about 16-year-old boys. And when you throw 16-year-old boys, I don't care how great they are at traveling the Mexican Trail and breaking horses at this unbelievable rate and betting the haciendo's daughter, fine. But when you put 16-year-old boys in a Mexican prison, I think you just still, and they just saw Blevins killed and like they're being beat up every day. Like John Grady has to mash up Lacey's food so he can even eat. I think that rape was a jump that we don't necessarily need to make for it to be horrific. And I think that if that's what we were intended to understand, I think he would have made it a little more clear.
So he would have forced it on us.
Oh my! There you go.
He would have made it.
It
if there's
would
one,
have been more blunt.
If there's one thing male on male prison rape is, it's subtle. So he wanted to ease into the story.
There is no lube for that.
Mike, baby, who hurt you? Who hurt
I'm
you?
I'm just making sure I heard you correctly.
I think you're projecting, but okay. Look, when we stop recording, if you need to talk about some shit, we're here for you.
We'll cut all that. Okay, bye.
Okay. All right. So back to the story.
Prison.
We go.
Yes.
So they they get out of
Yeah,
prison.
they're out of prison. They've been bailed out.
Because Alejandra's aunt bails them out, or like not just bails them out. They're like sent to. You can't just bailed out. They got like paid. The authorities got paid off. Like that's the only way that would happen. So anyway, so they're back.
And she sent them a bunch of fucking money.
So it was
Yeah,
unofficial.
and some money. Rollins leaves. He's not in the story at all anymore after this. I don't know if he's in the other books.
for a minute
My
at the
guess-
beginning.
No,
my
he's
guess is
not.
a minute,
He's
but-
not.
Oh, he's not.
for a minute
You
at the
never see him
end.
again.
No, you never see Rollins again.
Well, he goes to visit him when he goes back to Texas at the end.
Oh, not in the trilogy, though.
No, in this book, he's like, "Hey, I
Yeah,
brought
yeah.
your horse."
Yeah, yeah.
And he's
In
like,
this
"Oh,
book.
cool.
Yeah.
I like
Oh,
horse."
But he's basically not in the story again. So he goes
Basically.
back to the hacienda, and then he meets with the aunt, and the aunt is like, "Listen, I failed you out because I felt bad for you, but you still can't fuck my niece. Please don't. And she has this whole story about, women in my family, they're all hot-blooded, and everyone has, had all of these affairs. And something about like her sister who had two husbands. He was either at the same time or separately, but they were both dead in the revolution before she was 21. Something
One
like that.
died and then the other one died.
I think it was two husbands at the same time.
No, it wasn't the same time.
It was a very,
wasn't-
very
okay, it
short
Short
marriage.
period of time.
They're just very short. They
Yes.
It was a
almost
rough
overlap.
time, one of the Mexican wars we didn't know existed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, and it's like women always have this. And I too had a thing because she's missing two fingers on one of her hands from like a gun accident. Like the gun she was shooting when she was a teenager, like blew up in her hand. And so she's also not a regular lady. She's not just a like proper lady. And anyway, but she's like, I know women in my family. I know how that might feel. I know my niece is probably just like this too. That's why I need to keep you away from her because I have never told her. She says this whole long speech, which goes on for pages.
14 of them.
I've never, many pages.
It's
I've never
it's
told
14
her.
pages.
I never told her that. I never told her she needs to be proper and good. I never did that. I never told her just to be like the good, what society expects of her. But we live in Mexico, and there's only one thing you can really do, and so you have to stay away. And he's like, okay. He says something. He's on this long speech. He's like, I thought someone would understand. Someone like you would understand me better. She's like, oh no, I absolutely understand you. That's why you can't go near my niece. And then he leaves and he calls Alejandra up in Mexico City and they're like, let's meet. And he gets her away for one day and he's like, and he fucks her a bunch more times and then says, will you marry me?
They are 16,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, they can do it. And it's like, will you marry me? And she's like, no. And she chooses not to stay with him. She's like, sorry, can't do it.
Because of her aunt's wishes?
No,
Yeah, good question.
it's not because of her aunt's wishes. So Alejandra and Alfonso do make a deal, right? So the thing that gets real fucked up is it wasn't Blevins, right? So Alejandra, when her aunt tells her, you have to stop this or I'm going to tell your father, Alejandra goes, fuck you, I'm going to tell him first. And so Alejandra tells Don Hector that she's been sleeping with John Grady. And so that's what sets all this prison stuff into motion. And so now when John Grady and Lacey are in jail, Alfonso goes to Alejandra and says, I'll get them out. If I don't get them out, they will die. Let's just be really clear. He will die. I will get him out. But in order for me to do that, you have to agree that you are never going to see him again. And so she says, fine. That's what I'm going to do. And so then Alfonso gets him out. But then when John Grady says, see me one more time, Alejandra does just to tell him.
This is it.
This is it. Like,
Okay.
I'm not, like, I told my aunt.
I'll fuck
my
your brains
aunt knows,
out and then I'm done.
And then I'm done.
Okay.
And then I'm done. I'm finished. Because if we don't separate this, if we don't.
There's going to be further consequences.
What Alejandra knows is either she doesn't or he's going to die. There
Yeah.
is no future there.
Yeah.
There's no future there.
This is
so
it.
that's what happens because Alejandra tells John Grady, you are a great disappointment to my nephew. You are a great expense to me, right? Because Don Hector's all pissed off because this thing between him and his daughter could make his hacienda at risk. But Alejandra spends her money to make that shit work because she loves her niece and she just wants her niece to do the right thing. And if she's got to spend money to make her niece not do this thing anymore, that's what she's going to do. So that's how that kind of thing works out. So when John Grady calls her and says, hey, she knows that if she doesn't tell him to his face, I'm never going to be with you. Okay. He's never going to let it go.
Closure.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
That's why old lady gets him out, but Alejandra gets him off. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Did I
that's
hear that right?
that's exactly what I'm saying.
And he should have went to the dad and be like, I broke one more mare. And then that would have been.
Yeah, that's exactly what he should have done.
I'm sure it would have got him a whole lot farther.
Mike has no daughters.
That is untrue.
All right.
They're
then let's-
very young.
Then let's play that scene out.
They're very young.
Oh, yeah.
There's one other thing that the dueña says to him, which is like, you think that she's bailing him out and getting him out of town, and she's saving Alejandro so she can be, right with the world. But she's like, no, fuck that. I don't want that for her either. Like, I want her to live something that I never could. And like, I don't know what the future's going to be. Like, we're in the middle of a fucking revolution. Anything could happen. She could have anything better. I don't want her to get married to some snobby society bitch either. Like, that sucks too. Whatever it is, it's not you though, kid. So you got to bounce.
Yes.
'Cause that's never going to work either way. Because that's not better for her either.
Okay, so I had super short notice on this episode and did not get to finish the book. So does he not end up with
Oh,
the
God,
ranch?
no.
I'm guessing.
Oh, God, no.
That's
Okay,
gone.
Oh,
This is a
God.
I
Cormac
didn't
McCarthy
figure,
book.
but
No Cormac McCarthy books have happy endings.
No.
none of them.
This is
Some
literally
have
his happiest.
optimism.
I don't know. I think the road
ends with optimism.
I think the road's kind of a happy ending.
The road has something hopeful in
I think
it.
that's the
at
one that
the
you
end.
told me that I should
The man
start
still
with.
dies, though. Spoiler. The man still dies. The main character still
Is
dies.
he the main
right at the
character
end,
though?
so-
Is he the main character though?
Okay.
He's
Well,
half of the
not
main
after
characters.
he's dead.
I don't know that he's. I don't
The
know
main
that he's
character is the road itself.
I'm not down with that
name
either.
of the book.
I'm not down with the road being the main
The main
character.
character of the
either.
Lorax is the Lorax, the main character of the road.
We're gonna break
Okay,
it
so
down.
the horses are not the main
Lorax
character.
rules.
No, it's only the pretty ones.
Yeah.
Who gives a fuck about the ugly
Okay,
ones?
so
only the pretty
okay,
They're
so
blue.
so we're not calling Alejandra a horse, like just because she gets rode.
No, but her father would cut out the S in that word when he finds out what she's been doing in the barn.
Fuck y'all.
All right. So moving along, she says, "No, I'm not. Like, this is it. Sorry, goodbye." And so John Grady decides he needs to do some real badass cowboy shit and shoot a bunch of people. Actually, what he really wants to do is get his horse back and Blevins' horse back because it's a very pretty horse. So he goes.
He wants all
back
the
to
pretty horses.
prison. Exactly. He wants them all for himself. He goes back to the prison or the jail with the captain, the original captain. It says, and he walks in and he's with a gun. And he's like, "Where's my fucking horse?" The guy's like, "I don't have your fucking horse." But then he "You bring me the fucking horse." So he kidnaps the captain and puts him in handcuffs, and then there's a big shootout. I have to admit, I was just skimming this afternoon because I also needed to finish in a hurry. So there's big shootout and all this stuff, but also John Grady gets shot twice, I think.
He gets shot in the leg once, but it comes out, so there's two holes.
Oh, right. You see, there you go. So
Yeah.
anyway, so this all big fight scene, and it's oh, this is finally a fucking cowboy book. Great. This is the OK Corral finally happened. And then he finally gets away. He gets the horse. He has two horses with him now.
He's got three horses.
3 horses. There you go.
Yeah. He's got
his
his
original
horse.
horse, Blevins' horse, and Rollins' horse.
Yeah.
And because he got shot, he has to disinfect the wound by heating his own gun over a fire and then sticking the gun, if he was super hot gun barrel, into the leg wound to disinfect it, which
And cauterize it so he doesn't bleed
I'm
out.
not a doctor, but I question whether that's actually a real thing. Let's
Well, that's just going to
anyway,
show
it
how
was-
much
it was
not a
real.
doctor you are, because it works gangbusters.
That same approach also
make
worked in
noise.
The Road, so it's in universe.
It's something that they do in westerns because it looks badass. When in reality, it would I feel like your meat would just get stuck to the gun and you had to rip it off again.
And then it would just get infected again. Yeah.
I was going to say, this book came out in 1992. That's after a decade of action movies where that's all fucking dudes did. They're like
true.
Arnold Schwarzenegger
Schwarzenegger.
movies and Stallone and fucking. I'm sure there's a Die Hard where he like shoots through his bullet hole to shoot another guy. Like
That's the fourth Die Hard, yes.
it's Die Hard, Live Free or Die or Die Hard,
Or Die Hard, yeah.
Christmas movies,
Yes,
all.
Christmas movies.
Christmas movies.
Actually, the fourth one is an Arbor Day movie.
I don't care.
I
They're all
don't-
Christmas movies. You can binge them on Christmas. I've ordained it to
You
be
could-
so.
You could binge a lot of things on Christmas. That doesn't make heroin a Christmas thing. But so
Depends on what you get for Christmas.
Exactly.
I mean, that white powder comes down on it's good enough for Bing, but there was action movies of like dudes just doing that kind of dumb bullshit. I think this is where Cormac
Yeah,
McCarthy's
it's
fucking
always,
pretty
right?
Sweet. I'm gonna put a little bit in my book. I need to have some manliness here.
Yeah, it is. It's always like the leather strap in the mouth and some like hot fucking poker to make some shit. Like the knife. It's usually a knife, right? But evidently,
Yeah, it's like a knife, but
Yeah.
this time it's even crazier because it's a like through and through his thigh.
Right, and
There's like an
what-
exit, and he sticks the gun into it to burn it from the inside.
But the
which is,
thing
like,
that
the
I
worst
don't
way to do
understand
that.
about the whole thing is like once you molest the barrel that way, the gun becomes like
Useless?
How is the gun ever like what are you going to do with the gun after that? Like I'm not shooting a gun after I've made the barrel so hot.
It's going to be warped.
I thought that was a very interesting idea that McCarthy chose.
There was no other piece of metal available.
I mean, I'm from New York, so I've only shot a gun once at a range, so I'm not an expert, but they do get hot when you shoot them a whole lot.
Yeah,
right?
but not
So-
fire hot
Yeah,
to
no.
where you can cauterize
You
a
are not
wound.
cauterizing a wound.
And the
from that.
outside's not getting red hot like that.
Well, I guess he never shoots again
I
after.
guess
that
not. I
happens. So
guess after you've put a
maybe
gun
it's still
barrel
stuck in his leg.
I don't know. I guess once you put a gun barrel through your leg, everybody else is like, "Don't fuck with him." Like maybe he should have led with that. I don't know.
Like, oh, that guy's just gonna die on his own.
Right? Like, don't fuck with him. He's just going to kill himself. Which, if you've read the trilogy, you find that's pretty much what happens.
What is the word people say when they want you to shoot a gun again?
Fire.
Fire. No?
It's a metaphor.
This is for my upcoming paper, The Hermeneutics of
The word
All the
fire.
Pretty Horses.
Is that what you're doing? All right.
No, what I think though, like the gun gets really hot, and it's not like he's in a fucking smithy. Like he's not a blacksmith. He just like heats it in a campfire or whatever.
It gets
right?
hot
So-
enough to burn your leg.
Yeah, I mean, it's
That
not
has
from
to
him.
be like-
It's
that's-
not from
that
him
has to
shooting
be-
it. It's from him sticking it in a fire.
But
so.
but hot enough to burn your skin is just as hot as a hot pocket. That doesn't mean that he's
You
like
didn't
at
have
a
a hot pocket
forge.
to close the wound.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've never
you had a
cauterized
hot
a
pocket,
wound
he
with a
would've been
hot
fine.
pocket.
You fucking could. You could. You put that in for 3.5 minutes. That inside of it, you could start a nuclear.
Maybe if you take
reactor
one of
with
the
that.
pepperonis out.
He could have put
It's
that on
plasma
there.
at that point.
Yeah,
It
those things
would've
are fucking
fused.
uranium.
It would have. He could have cauterized. He could have like if
Hot
his
pockets.
leg was missing, he could have sealed that wound with a hot pocket.
Which is what they did in the road.
No, they didn't have hot
They
pockets.
cauterized it with a hot pocket. The only remaining hot pocket
Cuts
after
off the whole
apocalypse.
foot, and he heats up the hot pocket, and he sticks the hot pocket on the end of his foot to become his new foot.
Okay,
and it just melts.
enough
It
about hot
fuses on.
pockets. If we start talking in cursive,
Well,
I
we
don't think we
talked
got
about
to
it.
talk about what we were drinking. We're drinking 55%.
Yeah,
Is that Jefferson? What
yeah,
that
no,
looks like,
no,
what is it?
we're hanging
Maker's
out.
Mark. Oh.
Yeah, we're hanging out with the
Cask
Maker's Mark
strength.
cast strength. So, I made a drink. I call it the Monster Maker, where I mix Makers with a peach monster. It's absolutely delicious, and it'll keep you up for like 3 days.
Are you just trying to remake Four Loko?
No, it's way better than Four Loko because Maker's
like
Mark.
5 Loko.
Yeah, the cast strength comes in at 110 proof, and it's absolutely delicious. So that's what we're that's what
We
we're
are
hanging
not
out with.
having it with Monster tonight.
Yeah,
We're just
no,
having it
and
on
I
ice.
think that if we put this bottle in a fire, the
I am not trying to stay up.
yeah, no.
But wait, you tell us about your creative cocktail to hide the fact that you're drinking cask strength booze. And you're like, but so I make this cocktail. It's cask strength.
Oh no, no, no,
whiskey,
no, no!
and
We drink.
But
No.
But hold the monster.
Yeah, I hold the monster. Like, cheers.
Yeah.
No, we hold the monster.
Alejandra did at some points too, but
No, she rode the monster.
well, that's where he learned about the hot pocket. But
It makes a hot pocket. All right. Maybe we should go back to he stole the horse. He got the horses back. Maybe we
he
should
got
go
the
back
horses
there.
back, shot a bunch of Mexican dudes, one shot him, he cauterized the wound, and then
how?
he gets
How
back
did he
to
do it?
America.
We're
then
not
he-
going back to that.
And then he
Wouldn't
gets
he be
back to
bleeding?
America. And then it's like, oh, thank God I'm in America again. But then he goes to a judge. I can't. He goes.
Well, because he gets arrested.
He somehow
he gets arrested
but not
because he has
the
the horse.
judge.
Well, no, he has Blevins' horse, and they're like, "The fuck you got this horse for? You must have stole it." And somebody else filed with the court that said, "This is my horse," and he's like, "This is absolutely not your horse." And so they end up in front of the judge, and the judge says, "All right, so tell me why this is your horse." And so John Grady tells them this story, and the judge is like, "All right, I have a couple of questions for you. Do you have clean underwear on?" I think that was like one of my favorite things because, like, he goes, "Do you have on clean underwear?" He's like, "Yes, sir, I do." He says, "Well,
I
will
haven't
you
shit myself in hours.
in the Mexican prison, maybe I didn't, but today I have on clean underwear." And the judge says,
Only because he rode through the river on the way over.
right. And so the judge says, "Well, will you show me the bullet wound?" And so John Grady drops his drawers in the middle of court to show the judge his cauterized by the barrel of his gun bullet wound. And the judge
Let the record show.
Yes, right? And the judge goes, "I've seen a lot of cases that have made me question humanity. This, sir, is not one of them. The horse is yours. I believe your story. Go on about your life. Be fruitful and prosper."
Thank you for having clean underwear.
Thank
on.
you for having clean underwear on.
So if he didn't have clean
Right, he
underwear,
never
he
would've
would have
proved
immediately
it.
have gone to jail.
Right.
He'd be like, "You stole that horse," and I'm like, "Now I'm back in fucking jail again."
Right.
God damn it.
Thank goodness for clean
I thought
underwear.
it was an interesting little discussion because it kind of still goes back to the propriety of the day, right? Because the whole reason John Grady is in this whole situation is because of his indiscretions while he was not married to this woman that he was having sex with. And so now he's in this courtroom and there's women in this courtroom, and the judge is like, "How are we going to do this? Like, we don't want to be improper. So, like, do you feel comfortable doing this kind of thing?" And I thought that was a very interesting kind of connection to the idea that McCarthy is trying to, like, that he does a lot with proper society that's private with public knowledge and what you can display publicly. He does that a lot in his books. Like, what's private, what's natural, what's public, what's governmental, and how do those things all work together? So yeah, he drops his fucking drawers and he gets the fucking horses.
Yeah, he gets the horse, and the judge is like, "Yeah, you know what? Fucking keep the horse. It's fine." And then he keeps the horse. And he also learns that his father is dead, or more like he
has a
He
premonition.
feels a great disturbance in the force, and is like, "I think my father is dead," and he just knows. And of course, he doesn't care about his mom, so therefore, it's kind of the same thing.
But then he has to go and return the horses. But he's got to find out who the fuck Blevins even was, because he doesn't know how to get the horse back. So he hears on the radio, it's because they knew that Blevins wasn't his real name, because he's like, "What's your name?" "Jimmy Blevins." Like the singer. He's like, "Nope, different one."
Like the preacher.
Yeah. So he goes, because he hears the Jimmy Blevins radio hour, and he goes to the place and he meets this guy who is a faith healer, but over the radio, so it's more efficient.
So that he can
put
heal
your hands on the radio.
Yeah, but he can heal
Feel through the radio.
Mars, right? It was like Mars, like people on Mars.
Because this was, they mentioned a thing, like, they tried to shut down the radio station, but the broadcasting tower itself is in Mexico, so America can't turn it off because this guy's a quack. And this was a thing people were doing back in these days, because they mention this thing. That's why Dr. Brinkley come here. Do you guys know who Dr. Brinkley was? He was a medicine man
Is this
back
the
in this
goat
era.
ball guy? It's
He's
the
the
goat
goat
ball
ball
guy.
guy who was like, if your dick don't work, I'll
need
cut
goat
your
balls.
balls open and I'll stuff goat balls into your sack.
Oh, my.
And then your dick will work again.
Oh.
And they're like, you have to stop doing this. This is not good.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can do whatever I want.
Let's just go with the blue
And
pill.
And he started putting goat balls into ladies' too,
Oh my
as equal
God.
opportunity. But he was the goat ball guy. Like, oh my God. I'm
He
so
built,
glad I know
like,
that.
the biggest fucking tower in Mexico that
Yeah.
you could reach like fucking Cincinnati with or whatever.
Yeah, he built a
And it was like
radio,
2
radio
feet
tower
past
in
the
Mexico
border.
because that way the government could not shut it down.
He just
And he
paid
put
off
goat
the
balls on that
Mexican
radio.
authorities in goat balls.
Yeah. And that's how we get chupacabras.
Except for, I don't know about goat balls, but I know he had like chicken and dumplings, right? Like he's like, they feed him
What do you think were in those dumplings?
lamb fries.
Yeah.
Lamb fries.
Good try.
So like he shows up there and she's like, "Oh, we're going to feed you." And there's this preacher and they're like, "Yeah, we don't know who Jimmy Blevins is, but my husband is healing people on Mars because of his radio station." And then that's when he realizes that who knows who these horses belong to, and it's obviously not this place. And so where do we go from here? It was really kind of
Well, one of them is Rollins.
yeah, yeah, I know, but like, it was kind of a sad moment in the book because I think if John Grady had been the romantic hero that some people want to make him, this was the moment where John Grady could realize that you can't fix everything in the universe, and he just doesn't. Like, you're here, and they're telling you this is not the place. And so where do you go from here? And John Grady still thinks that he can make everything right with the world, and you just can't. Like, you don't know all the things you don't know, and there's like this all these things that you can't fix. But
No
John Grady's
direction.
he still thinks he can. He's like, all right, so this isn't it's not here. Like the woman literally says, my husband's sermons could be heard on Mars, and so all these extraterrestrials are going to hear about Jesus in these in that wonderful.
If they have AM radio.
It's terrible. Like, it's awful. It's so awful. And even then, John Grady doesn't get it. Even then, he doesn't get it.
And then it's basically the end. I mean, he kind of rides off into the sunset.
Well, he gives Rollins his horse back, and he's like, hey, I thought you were dead. Like, nope. And I banged that Mexican girl again. He's like, cool, man. Because they're still 17. So
Smell my fingers.
Sweet, dude. High five. And then
Pow!
Does the farm end up sold? Do they
Oh, yeah,
even
yeah.
tell?
The farm is sold in the beginning of the book. Like,
Oh.
yeah,
it's done.
like John Grady's farm is gone. Like,
So
that's
before
never
he
a
even
thing.
starts fucking
Yes.
Alejandro?
Yes. John
Yeah, that's why he
Grady's-
leaves.
Yeah, that's why he leaves. John Grady's farm has been gone.
Okay, I guess I missed that part.
Been gone.
Got it.
and then he just decides to
Chase the pretty horses.
hang out. Yeah.
Until the
He just
next
rides
book.
away again.
Until the next book.
Is he? He's not in the next book.
He's
is he?
not.
I thought
He's
he was
not.
in-
He's not.
Yeah.
No, that's all. That's all. Billy in the next one, and then him
Yeah.
and Billy get together in the third.
Wait, so spoiler, he's not in the sequel.
No,
He's in
the sequel is a
the
different
sequel.
guy, and the third book is about the two of
Yeah,
them.
yeah. So Billy Parnham is in the second one, and then him, John Grady, and Billy get together in the third one.
Get together.
Yeah. Well, they don't get together. They don't get together. I wish they would. Honestly, if they had gotten together in the third one, it would have ended better for John Grady. But John Grady never changes.
Should we read the other? I've
Yeah,
never
no,
read-
you
never
absolutely
read the other
should.
ones.
You, you
Yeah,
absolutely should.
they're all very good.
Yeah,
They're all very good.
Jimmy, you've read all of them, yes?
It's been a minute, but yeah, I've read all of them.
So, in my opinion, All the Pretty Horses of the trilogy. So it's what is it? All the Pretty Horses. The second one
The
is
Crossing and Cities of the
and
Plain.
Cities of the Plain. So, in my opinion, I like Cities of the Plain the best. I like The Crossing next, and All the Pretty Horses in the trilogy. I like it, but of the three, it's my least favorite.
I think Cities of the Plain is more like his other books because it's darker and more depressing.
To be honest, I haven't read his two newest. I haven't read those.
They're real. We read them.
I
both.
saw that.
Yeah,
I saw that.
They're real weird.
And I
They're real
haven't
weird.
listened. I haven't listened to the podcast because I appreciate the way you guys just talk about them, and so I didn't want any
Yeah.
spoilers.
No,
so I
no,
haven't
you should
listened to them
definitely-
yet.
Definitely read it. Read
You
it.
will
first,
get
yeah.
There are
We're not going to
issues.
explain that one though. 'cause
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's-
don't tell me.
They're,
You can't.
they're real hard.
You can't explain.
Don't
that one.
tell me.
We tried. We failed. Yeah,
But I
can't do
will
it.
tell you, I've read everything from Cormac except his last two, The Passenger and Stella Maris. And I will tell you, All the Pretty Horses, which I did write a paper about. I'll be presenting at conference in May on All the Pretty Horses. It's still my least favorite. I like it, but it's still my least favorite Cormac book that I've read.
I say my least favorite is Orchard Keeper just because I thought it was the hardest, and I was just like at the end, like I don't even know what's going on at certain points.
So I would love to talk to you about that one because I think that when you like pull the Orchard Keeper apart and you figure out what's going on in there, it's I think the Orchard Keeper is one of the most beautiful books. Faulkner-esque it is, right? Like you're
Yeah,
like,
it's hard.
the fuck is going on right now? Right.
Yeah, I felt that way the whole time.
Yes. And
This one is way more, because we on this podcast we've done those two. We've done Blood Meridian, did The Road back in the day. I wasn't even on it then, and No Country for Old Men. And McCarthy is a difficult at times writer to even understand what the fuck is going on. I'd say All the Pretty Horses is like by far his easiest to even like comprehend. Like it's the writing was very straightforward for him, almost like a different person wrote it.
Completely
or like an
agree.
early version of him wrote it.
And I think it was
So it was
because
like, nice.
I think it was because when he wrote The Crossing first as a screenplay, right? And so the other ones came later as kind of a supplement to that, and I think that's why it's easier to read, because if you read something like The Sunset Limited that was written like a play, when you read things that McCarthy wrote because it was supposed to be for an audience, you get something that's a little easier to digest. But when you read things like The Orchard Keeper, which was his first one when he was still in his Faulkner phase, and then you move into the like Child of God, who is still kind of a little Faulkner-esque, but he's kind of moving into his giving you something you can understand in a kind of better way. I think when you move into those works, when you're walking through McCarthy as he writes them, it gets a little easier to understand. I definitely agree that All the Pretty Horses, if anybody's ever going to come into McCarthy in the beginning, I think you have two choices. I think you either go with Blood Meridian, which I think is his most brutal thing he's ever written, ever, or you go with All the Pretty Horses, which is his most understandable thing he's ever written. I don't know that you can kind of walk into McCarthy in anything else that he's written if you're trying to understand him as a writer. Because if you come to him in any other kind of way, if you come to The Orchard Keeper, you're not going to get it. If you come to Sutchery, you're not going to get it. If you come into Child of God, it's just going to be disgusting. So you can't read Child of God. You can't read Child of God if you haven't read Blood Meridian. I'm a firm
It's like,
believer.
oh, this is actually pretty tame.
Correct. I don't think you can do that
There's
because
only one dead rape.
and quite frankly, if we're going to talk about McCarthy as an author, I think that if you haven't read Sutchery, you don't understand him, because Sutchery is like his most epic novel that he's ever written. And in Sutchery, there is this overarch theme of hospitality that you cannot miss, right? Because everybody in Sutchery is broke. Nobody in Sutchery has anything. But whenever two people are together, everybody is giving somebody something. I'm giving you food. I'm giving you a beer. Let me buy you something. Like, there is a hospitality there in Sutchery that you just can't miss. And so when you realize that if you can get past the brutality of McCarthy, that there is always some type of humanity there. When McCarthy is trying to tell you that even in the most brutal moments, even when everything is the most disgusting it can ever be, when people act like humans, there's always possibility. I think that's what McCarthy gives us in every single thing he's ever written. And I think that's what's beautiful in all of his work. And for me, it's really hard. Like, I have to, after every McCarthy book, I have to read like Jane Austen. I have to have like this palate cleanser that gives me some beautiful little, like, no bullshit English bullshit drama, because because McCarthy is so fucking brutal. Except for when he's so brutal, but when you go into him and when you understand that what he's trying to tell you is that if you can move past the brutality, if you can move past the things that humans do to each other, there's hospitality there, there's connection there, there's humanity there. We see it beautifully in The Road. You see it in
it's
Old
in
Country.
Like all of his westerns.
All
you
of
know,
it.
Every time in this book, like they're wandering around the desert and then come across some Mexicans who clearly have nothing, and they're like, "You got any food?" Like, "Yeah, have whatever food we got here." Cool, man.
We want to buy your boy, but we'll feed you first.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want a skinny boy; you got to fatten him up.
And you have the little girls, right? Like, you have the little girls. Like, when John Grady is like all wrapped up, they're like, can we bring you cigarettes? Like, they're like, can we bring you some stuff? Like, he always has hospitality in his novels. And I really think that, I think that when you can get past the brutality of it all, that's where his beauty is.
What about, it's been a while since we read Blood Meridian. Where's the silver lining in Blood Meridian?
Eventually, you die.
Yeah, you die, but the judge lives forever, and he dances around on his dainty baby feet.
You're
I don't
not
remember
suffering
much.
anymore.
Blood Meridian.
That was fucked up.
Yeah, I'm going to be really honest, because that's a good question. For me, Blood Meridian was super, super hard for me, because it was absolutely so horrific. But I think for me, Blood Meridian was one of those books that said, because the kid, he never gave him a name, right? He was just the kid. And what you knew from the kid was, if that wasn't the situation he was in, that's not who he would have been. And for me, that's the only thing that I could pull from the Blood Meridian was, maybe if we could have given him a better shot, maybe if the war wasn't what he was thrusted into, if the war wasn't the only way he thought he could make his way and make a life for himself, if he had another option, he would have taken it because it wasn't natural for him to behave those ways. That's what I took from the Blood Meridian.
Well, that's probably also the other thing that McCarthy not always, but most of his books write about is inevitability, or like once you have started on a path, that is the path you are on forever, which is the point of this book, certainly. But Blood Meridian was the same thing. No Country for Old Men, it was like, you picked up the drugs in the shootout. What did you think was going to fucking happen? So, like, once you are doing a thing, that's it forever, man. You're fucked. It's never a good thing.
But I think it kind of goes back to what he said when he gave Lacey that conversation, right? When Lacey said, whenever I knew when I made a choice, like Lacey says it. And I think that that's one of those moments in the book where I can take it and I can put it in every McCarthy novel that I've ever read and said, this is the point. Where Lacey says, this is where we made the decision. This is where I knew I could never come back from it. This is the choice. Like, so you need to make a choice right now, because once we make the choice, that's it. You can't do anything. And Llewellyn, you're absolutely right, in Old Country for No Men, once he decided he was going to take that money and put it up underneath his trailer, that was it. It didn't matter who he was before, didn't matter who he was after. He took the money when he knew he shouldn't have taken the money. And that was it. There was nothing he could ever do. Carla Jean was going to die. Even though she had nothing to do with it, she was a complete innocent, and she called Sugar out on all of his bullshit. She knew who Sugar was. She still died. And that was because Llewellyn did the thing that he did, and there was no coming back from that.
This is a really optimistic conversation to have leading into Christmas. Now I'll remember that time I did something awful when I was 17 or something. I think that's actually really a series of very interesting observations about Cormac McCarthy that make a shit ton of sense to me. I have this question about any kind of hard writer like this. And we ask this kind of often. Like, isn't it kind of obnoxious to fucking write stuff that is like, yeah, no one's going to understand what I'm talking about. It's like playing modern jazz. Like, no one's going to get this. But I'm going to do it.
This is for me.
Yeah, it's for me. And it's beyond pinky up.
I think these aren't that hard to understand. You can, even if you don't get them, they're still fun to read.
I mean, we just read fucking Ulysses a couple weeks ago.
Oh, don't even start. That's
that
beautiful.
Was
That's beautiful work. That's beautiful fucking work.
You're
but
wrong.
It is a book equivalent of sucking your own dick.
Maybe. But here's the real truth. Like,
So we are not English majors. So we have degrees in everything else other than English. So for us, Ulysses was just completely incomprehensible.
beautiful. I would say beautiful. And here's what I would say to that. I would say there are 11 billion million words on the planet, right? And aren't we so?
And they're all in Ulysses,
right? Yes. And aren't we so lucky? And aren't we so lucky that we get like? I think about it all the time. I'm like, if I lived to be 250 years, if I was Methuselah and I got 989 years, I would never get to read all the words I wanted to read. And that's what I love about
E.L.
it.
James keeps writing books.
Yeah, for real.
Never keep up.
For real. Like, I've read shit.
Well, she's a slow one.
I've read shit and I'm like, this really fucking sucks. And here's the real truth. I've never published a book before. So I don't know how hard that is. I don't know how hard that is to go 60, 90,000 words in a document and send it to a publisher somewhere and say, hey, will you send this to other
it
people?
Evaluated by
and they're like,
people
okay,
that aren't
people
you.
will buy that. And oh my God, isn't that fucking fantastic?
Yeah.
And that's fucking hard. And good for them for doing that.
Yeah.
And if I don't like it, fine. That's
You have to find someone who
'Cause let's be real
understands
honest.
your cup of tea.
So I host a book club called Books with Bitches and Bourbon. And for whatever reason, my book club loves Kristen Hanna.
We almost read one of them.
Oh, God.
Did one of those. We almost did one of
Don't.
those.
Yeah.
Don't.
We were only going to do the one that they're going to turn into a movie.
No, oh God.
And then we didn't. We didn't.
Yeah, then we didn't.
It's
How do you guys
we
choose
mostly
your books?
do books.
How do you guys?
We mostly do books that are bad, and then we make fun of them.
How do you guys
So,
choose your
like,
books?
That is
The books
a
choose
good
us.
question.
that's a great question. How do you choose your books?
Well, for a while, we were, burn way through, like, books everyone's read.
Famous
like classics
books.
and
It's
stuff, famous
essentially
books.
the more famous the book, the more
Yeah.
likely we are to do it.
So
Okay.
we
Occasionally
don't.
we'll throw in one that's, like, going to turn into a movie. But this year, upcoming, we decided we've had to suffer for so long. Let's just read books we want to read at least a little bit. So we have a
we
few
don't.
coming up that we were like wanted to.
This is one of the best bottles of whiskey I've ever had.
Is that the Frank
It is the
Sinatra
Jack
one?
Daniels Sinatra. And it comes in this cute little box. And inside of the box,
That is what John Grady Cole did a few times on the
We
pod.
have-
oh yeah,
we have our nominations.
we let people put stuff in the box that never was supposed to go in the box.
Yeah.
Just like
Phrasing.
Alejandra.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah, I can roll with you. So that's how we pick ours. And so like Kristen Hanna's been in there a couple of times. Ellen,
Kristen Hanna,
Hilda.
like Colleen Hoover. I feel like is one of the bigger ones that we.
We did a couple of those.
The Colleen
and made
Hoover?
fun of them.
Yeah, I
Made
can't.
fun of that. Yeah.
So I guess what I mean is, I don't. It doesn't bother me that there's books for a whole bunch of different people. I just love that people read. Like I just love that people pick up a book and they're like, "Oh, this is what I like," and I'll read it. And I don't really care what that is.
I've definitely
we
appreciated.
end up discussing that a lot.
I've definitely appreciated like venturing out of my comfort zone and reading books that are out of my norm because of being part of a book club.
Yeah, I do too. But I like this. I like picking a book and talking to people about different things about the book. Like, if it's not a book I can't talk about, if the book conversation
would've had
takes
time to
15 minutes,
finish it.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly, from our side, is like we started this, or they started this. I joined a few months
pretty early
in,
on.
but it was like get to read more. So like I haven't heard of most of the books that these guys pick. Like they read more than I do, and they know more authors than I do. But I'm been along for the ride and I've enjoyed it. But we're coming up on like almost 400 episodes, so after a while you run out of shit to do. So it's like, all right, let's try some weird stuff or try some terrible stuff, because also doing this every week it's hard to like read a book a week. And
I don't know.
Every
no,
week?
the read
Wow.
the read the book a week is not what
Every
blows
week?
my brain. The fact that you can edit an episode a week is what blows my brain.
it is,
Yep, it takes time.
yeah, it takes
Takes
time.
time. Very bad.
So to go back to Mike's question about obnoxious writers, I think that it all goes to taste. And I think that I just appreciate that. I like that we have media like this so that people can listen and say, oh, that sounds like something I would like. Oh, that sounds like something that I wouldn't like. Because I know that Cormac McCarthy's not for everybody. I only read Cormac McCarthy because it was part of a grad seminar that I had to take. I had never read him before, ever. It was a Hemingway McCarthy seminar. I love Hemingway. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to take that class. And so then I got introduced to Cormac McCarthy, and I realized that it was beautiful stuff that he was doing, and something that I wouldn't have normally understood had I not read him in that context. So,
I mean, he's my favorite author, and I do not understand a lot of it. So
Good to know.
yeah,
What was the name of that course? Like macho dudes who don't say much.
and actually, it was way more generic than that. It was, are you ready? Are you ready? It was Hemingway and McCarthy.
So original.
That was
So macho dudes who don't say much.
that was
yeah.
that was
like the title.
That was the name of the course.
So basic.
But is it? But like, and I guess that's what kind of gets me really interested in those kind of things, because as a woman in those kind of classes, and when people say macho dudes that don't say very much, the dudes never defend the guys. Like when there's accusations of misogyny, like there's never the dude that's speaking up in the class going, oh, that's not misogynistic. It's always me. Like I'm always the one going, it's not really misogyny. Like All the Pretty Horses, the fact that there's not a whole lot of women in McCarthy's novels is not necessarily misogyny. All the Pretty Horses, the women are functioning in a 1949 Mexico. Like if you put the history in there, all of his women are completely time appropriate.
So you need to know the
Yes,
history.
you need to know the
background.
history. Like if you had Alejandra do anything else, it would be completely anachronistic because she wouldn't have done.
If you have her
anything
acting
else.
like a
she wouldn't
2020
have
girl.
behaved anywhere else. If you take Hemingway in Hills Like Elephants, like she wouldn't have behaved any other way. Hemingway wouldn't have known to write her any other way because that was the period of time that he lived in. So is that misogyny, or is that just
appropriate for
the
context.
history? And so like I am always like I have Hemingway tattooed on my body. Like that's how much I love him.
And we're going to break into the pool.
And I think he's fantastic. And so I think that that's where I kind of get to when we're talking about these kind of works and we're talking about these kind of authors, when you can't conflate the author with their characters. Like McCarthy's not writing women because McCarthy doesn't love women. McCarthy's not writing women because they're not in the fucking story. All the Pretty Horses doesn't have women because he's a misogynist. All the Pretty Horses doesn't have women because there's no fucking women. Like when John Grady,
they're not traveling the
they're,
trail.
they're not traveling on the trail. Like when Lacey,
It could be said that the smartest character in the book is the dueña, who's the only like, you guys are all fucking crazy. I'm just trying to make the world a better place. What? Shut the fuck up. Get out of here.
and he absolutely does that because when Alfonso talks about the chess game is kind of one of the most telling things about the book when it comes to McCarthy and women, because the chessboard is made of a wood that is very rare and was most often used as gun stock. So there's the battle analogy, right? That McCarthy doesn't explicitly say, but he never does. And then the chess pieces are made of things from the top 5 game in Africa. And he also doesn't say that, but that's absolutely what it is. And so the King's opening is a chess opening that came from the 1940s. It was an Irish chess player. It's also called the tumbleweed opening, which I think is brilliant on McCarthy's part, because you have the King's Own, which talks about Duena's class, and the tumbleweed, which talks about John Grady's Cole's Texas upbringing that pulls them into direct conflict with each other. And in the American Chess Journal, where this opening is talked about, there's a anonymous poem written about the tumbleweed opening where there's these 2 chess guys that come together, and this guy knows the tumbleweed opening and he uses it, and this other guy has no idea. And there's parts of the poem that talks about he didn't realize his queen couldn't be saved. There's so many parts of the poem that kind of moves into what McCarthy is trying to say about Alejandra's honor, and how because she lived in Mexico, because this honor system that she lived under was never going to be saved by somebody like John Grady. Like Alejandra was the only one that could have saved her. This poem works in all of those kind of ways. And I can't imagine that McCarthy didn't know about those kind of things. And so those are the kind of things that always gets me excited.
It's the kind of thing he knows and would write about.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And it's the kind of stuff that we've come upon in many books where it's just like, we need someone to tell us why this book is, because it's like, how the fuck am I supposed to know?
I was going to say, he would just assume that you're going to know all these things or come about these.
I don't think he
knowings.
would. I don't think he would assume that you would know.
No.
I think that
But like all the classics and stuff where, they're clearly speaking about the Industrial Revolution era
Drunk Nate's ready to go to
bookbinder John Smithers. It's like, what? Who the fuck are you talking? Like, if we don't learn about this shit in like a college class where someone is like,
I don't think he would assume.
line by line, it's hard. Some of these are hard.
I think that some writers go, if I put so much work into writing it, maybe you should put a little effort into reading it.
In understanding
Meet me
it.
halfway.
That's what I think. And it's just like food. Everything's not for you. Maybe you don't like this. Maybe you just are looking for a Colleen
Your palate
Hoover.
may be under a different taste.
Right. Like maybe it's just not for you.
I hear you on that. Like, not every, sometimes you're in the mood for Twinkies and sometimes you want
Right.
something that's harder. Like, you have to mature before you enjoy blue cheese or something. Like, they're like an acquired taste.
Or beer or bourbon,
I acquired that one fast. But I just think, and I like flowery writers. Something like Michael Shea Bond's one of my favorite writers to read. I love beautiful, oh my God, just look what he did with these words. I appreciate that. And Cormac McCarthy's kind of like that sometimes. You're like, holy shit, what is that word that dictionary doesn't even have in it that he pulled out of fucking somewhere? I appreciate that part. But I just think, you say before, there's the lament. There are so many books and there's so little time to read them. that when somebody sits down and says, I'm going to write a fucking book that you need to spend 7 weeks on, that is one massive ego. And
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
It's really obnoxious. And like, you know, at the end of Cormac McCarthy's career, you could kind of understand. It's like, well, he's Cormac McCarthy. But as like a 31-year-old man, like, shut the fuck up, Cormac.
I've got
your
other things to do with my time.
like, go get a job, you dickhead. Your wife's hungry. Like, like what a tool.
So are you saying you didn't like it?
No, I did.
Okay, just checking.
I liked the 15%. I was like, I understand the plot of this. I understand to some degree. We're like all this like deep shit. We're like, and don't you understand that when he put it on the coaster, that was about Rhodesia. I'm like, I don't fucking get any of that.
No, the coaster was her hymen, Michael.
It was her hymen. Yes, he was resting his phallic glass on it, and you know, he was drinking a Bloody Mary. Like, oh, gross. Okay,
Took a drink at the wrong time. I'm so glad it didn't come out my nose.
I don't get all of those. Like when you say it, you're like, oh wow, yeah, clever. But I know. I just think.
And part of that is
maybe I have to be in the mood for that too.
It's the breakneck pace with which we have to read these at times.
That's true.
It does.
So that's what I was going to
that.
say. So like in my short time, and even though I didn't get through the whole thing, like even trying to do this in a short amount of time on audio, and I'm not typically an audio person, trying to just go through like that is not the format that one should do an intro to McCarthy.
I completely agree. And I think that's why everything has its place,
Yes.
right? Like when you do something like The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones, anything by Tara Jenkins Reid. She's wonderful.
Yes.
I love her. I love to read her. It's going to take me exactly 15 minutes to break that book down.
Right.
It's not going to take me any more than that. But when you talk about people like Hemingway and McCarthy,
I need more than a 3-day notice.
and Rushdie, because you guys have tackled Rushdie. That was a great podcast, by the way.
We did not.
Oh, thank you.
We read it. I would not say that
we read it.
We did not
He's like, I don't know if we
tackled
tackled
us.
it.
I do want to tell you.
Our eyes passed over the words.
He stiff-armed us.
I do want to tell you, and I did want to tell you this because so next semester in my program, I am taking a post-colonial class that's going to be completely centered on Indian literature. Midnight's Children is going to be one of them. And when we got to talk to the professor about what the class was going to look like, I told him that I'd tried to read Satanic Verses and I didn't know how to conquer it because it was like reading Faulkner. I knew that he had done something beautiful, but I had missed it and I wasn't really sure what was going on. I will tell you that what he told me was many people have tried to conquer India, just don't do it. Just let it wash over you. And I had heard that from him before I listened to your podcast about the Satanic Verses, and so I really appreciated the way you guys the way you guys approached it because it's fucking hard.
Thank you.
Bafflement and sadness.
Yeah, like it's fucking
And
hard.
alcohol?
It's fucking hard.
Alcohol helps everything.
Yeah, it was hard.
Nearly everything.
It's quite hard. So, so as far as All the Pretty Horses goes, I liked it. It was very okay. I mean, it was more than fine. We've read so many other very bad things that I was like, oh, okay, this is.
We've read worse.
We've read so many worse things. We have read so many worse things. Oh my God. But anyway,
we
so I
purposely give
liked
each other
it.
bad
I
books.
didn't say I loved it though. It's not 5 stars for me. Maybe I need to read the other 2 books in the trilogy because you say that they're better. So perhaps we need to do that. But it was like, it was pretty good.
So what is your rating out of the 5?
I'm
say
trying to
3.
decide between 3 and 4.
I thought you were going to say 3.
I'm trying to decide between
3
those
and a
2.
half.
We've read so many terrible things, though, that is like, okay. It
hard
was
to judge stuff in a
definitely
vacuum.
better than that.
Just go 3.5.
But yeah, well, it won't. Goodreads won't let me select 3.5.
We take an overall vote on our group.
Yeah. Anyway, that was my opinion.
I gave it 5 because I don't give a fuck. But also because, like, I gave it 5 the first time I read it. I don't even know, like 5 or 6 years ago. and I didn't remember much of it. And since then, I read a bunch more Cormac McCarthy, and this time through, I was like, maybe this is actually like a 4-star. But I think like 3/4 into it, it really does pick up and become like what I actually like about Cormac McCarthy. Like the last quarter of it is totally fucking different from the rest of it, which is the writing style changes. It becomes like it's like Blood Meridian with less murder. Some murder, but much less murder. And like the Dueñas whole fucking thing was like, this is why I like him as a writer. I don't get everything. I absolutely don't get everything. I get a solid 40%, maybe. I mean, maybe, but I think it bumped it back up to 5 for me because, fuck it. Because I can do what I want.
Hell yeah.
Because we're in America, not Mexico. The rules are whatever we want them to be here.
You're not going to end up in prison.
What about you, Reba? What'd you think?
Oh, I don't think it's a fair vote because I didn't get to finish. So all I'll say is based on the vote and what I've heard, I'm going to finish it. So that's a fair vote.
That's fair, yeah.
Okay.
I think that qualifies at least as a 3.5.
It's worth finishing, yeah.
I like that Reba voted present for the vote. Oh, no, I thought it was great. I do. I just don't get everything in it. And that's like annoying to me sometimes, but I enjoyed it. Just because I'm like annoyed at like, what a snobby douchebag. Doesn't mean I don't like the book. Ulysses I thought was a piece of shit. But this I thought was... I enjoyed the story. I wanted to know what happened. I cared about the character. It was pretty wild. I just didn't get all of like the literary, like, oh, don't you see what this is really about stuff? And when it's pointed out to me, maybe it's my own insecurities. I'm like, how did I miss this? How did I not know about 1949's Mexican female, gender roles? But that was great. I'd recommend it. And it lacked, for a lot of it at least, like what I associate with Cormac McCarthy, because I've read The Road and Blood Meridian and No Country for Old Men. I think it's the ones we've done, right? They're all
and you're like, this
heavy.
was an easy read.
Yeah, this is his beach read.
Before your vote. Do y'all okay, so I know Jimmy is already, but at least Mike, and I don't know if Nate has, do y'all envision reading the trilogy?
Oh, sure. I
I have a feeling
to
we'll
complete
do
things.
it. Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious based on your interest in the first one.
Will you invite
say they
me
get
back,
better.
please?
Yeah, we need someone to explain to us why.
And if I have more notice, I promise I will read.
No, I definitely.
All right,
wanna
Mike,
finish it.
continue.
No, I will read it partly because I have like an obsessive thing where I have to finish a series. But yeah, I do want to read it because he is a great writer and I enjoyed it. I just think it lacked the like scary heaviness of the other books where I like left a changed man having read The Road. Where I was like, oh my God, I've seen the darkness in a man's soul. And then you read this and you're like, oh yeah, there are pretty
Cowboys.
horses.
But you would not have felt that had you read this first of his works.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, yeah, it's hard. We're always fitting the books we read into like the puzzle of the other books we've already read. So like it's recast compared to what else you come to it. But no, I liked it a lot.
Okay, so
I would recommend it.
she can't comment on this because, and maybe Jimmy can't either because he's read all of them also. But
I do not remember them at all, though.
I guess I'm wondering whether y'all recommend that I finish the trilogy before going into like Blood Meridian and the other darker sides of his works.
Probably yes.
Okay.
Yeah, probably. If this is your first McCarthy.
Yeah, I started The Road and didn't get to finish, and then she's like, "Oh, by the way, in like 2.5 days, we're doing this recording."
Then maybe you don't need to do this whole trilogy. You could just do The Road, and if the sadness and despair of The Road doesn't break you,
okay,
then you could try Blood Meridian. But if The Road makes you too sad, then don't do Blood Meridian.
Okay, so you're saying that I can try The Road before finishing trilogy and decide on future works.
And the road is pretty short.
Okay.
So you can
It
knock
is
that thing out.
actually a short book.
All of it's pretty short unless you tackle Suttree. Like Suttree's the only one.
Took me a long time.
Yeah, like Suttree's the only one that is going
I
to
just
take
wanted
you any kind of
someone
like
else's
real
opinion.
time.
Just skip right to Child of God.
Don't!
Be like,
I've already gathered that info from tonight. And tonight was the first time I've ever heard of that book. So
Well, now you can't ever unknow it.
no, I cannot. And so I know that is not definitively going to be my next read.
That's a beach read.
No.
Which one?
It's fucking
Suttree?
not. Don't
Child of
bullshit
God.
me.
Oh, Child of God is.
Don't bullshit me.
Yeah, you're
A
that.
light, breezy necrophilia book.
Yeah, it's so
Bullshit.
fantastic.
You're bullshitting a bullshitter.
It's so beautiful.
Just don't read it at a nude beach because then you can't hide your erection.
for the
Okay,
for the dead people.
What's the temperature up there?
It was 40 today.
Yeah, I think y'all might be under frostbite.
So
Well, yeah, but if you do it and it's hot, the body goes back quicker. That's science.
it is science. So I love All the Pretty Horses. I like it for a lot of reasons. I like it because it's a great introduction to Cormac McCarthy. Because when you read it, it kind of gives you this like introduction to the way he uses grammar, to the way he uses the printed word, and it's just a nice, easy kind of move into him. The thing that I do not like about All the Pretty Horses is it gives you a false sense of idea about what he's doing for characters. Because if you come into All the Pretty Horses first, what you think is that John Grady Cole is this romantic hero, is this ideal character that he is trying to produce. And he's really not. Unless you read the full of the trilogy, you don't understand what he's doing. And so the reason I like All the Pretty Horses is because it's the easiest thing to read from him. It's the
It's
least
just the least.
it's the least
real.
brutal. It's the least brutal
But
of
it's
his
the
work.
least real of him.
No. It's very real. It's very real. But it's the least brutal of his work. But if you go in there and you haven't committed to reading the trilogy, you don't really understand what he's doing. So that's why I have a love-hate relationship with it, because it's the easiest one to recommend to people because it's not as dark. But it's beautiful in its prose. He's a great storyteller. It's a beautiful story, and I really like it. But I would say unless you've committed to reading the trilogy, it's not where I would start. It's
what
really
would-
not.
What would you rate it?
I think
By
I
itself.
would rate.
By
I don't know
itself.
by itself. I don't know anything that Cormac McCarthy's ever written that I wouldn't rate a 5 because
Really?
I think I've read it all and I think it's just that good. I think he's just that good. So there's nothing that I would tell you don't read from him. But I'm telling you, if you're just gonna read, if All the Pretty Horses is the only thing you're gonna read from him, just don't. Choose your time doing something else because you're not gonna get it. You're not gonna understand it. It's not gonna make sense to you. It's not the thing. All the Pretty Horses is not a standalone book. It's just not.
I didn't know that.
It's just not. If you're not going to read it as part of the trilogy, you're never going to understand it. It's not going to make sense to you. What he's trying to tell you as an author is not going to make sense to you. It's not the point. If you don't meet Billy, you're never going to understand John Grady. McCarthy tries to tell you a little bit of it by giving you Lacey and Blevins as the opposites, but unless you meet Billy, you're never going to understand what he's trying to tell you. So if All the Pretty Horses is all you're going to read, just don't. Go for something like No Country for Old Men. No Country for Old Men really does kind of give you the
It's a
barometer.
standalone.
Yeah, like the whole kind of like temperature of McCarthy's characters. If you don't want the super brutal and if you don't want the babies on the fire, like No Country for Old Men will kind of do that for you. So go there instead. If you're going to go, oh, I'm going to like kind of investigate what Cormac McCarthy's doing with characters and with story arc and with ideas, then do All the Pretty Horses, but commit to reading the trilogy. Because if you don't, you never meet Billy, you never understand who John Grady Cole is as a person, and just don't. But I still give All Pretty Horses a 5 because I've read the trilogy. And if I hadn't, maybe I wouldn't.
So let me ask this. As a reader of various things and not one particular gist, if you will, at what point do you recommend the darker pieces of his?
Just fucking do it.
Good question.
That's a great question.
And I welcome all of your input because all of you have read some of his darker pieces.
Because I
haven't.
Because I only walked into Blood Meridian because I didn't know any better.
I think we did that too. And then we've had many people comment to us on the internet like, you guys did not get it.
So what's your guys'
Fuck it.
what's
Which is true.
everybody's feedback on that then? Like, do you recommend that as a read?
Of course I do. It's the same way we talk
At
about
some
whiskey.
point.
No, it's the same way we talk about whiskey.
It's not for everybody's liking.
So when we talk about whiskey, so there's a trend right now in whiskey where overproof whiskey is like this end all be all. So anything over 100 proof, like if it's not 100 proof, if it's not 50% or better, nobody's drinking it. And it's kind of that thing where you can't be a legitimate whiskey drinker unless you're putting something in your face that would blow most people's faces back. Because I don't know if you've ever done 124 proof, but that shit is fucking real. And
I bet.
Have you?
Real flammable.
Nope. I have not.
Oh.
Jimmy probably has.
We drank it straight out the bottle.
So we do it. So like I've got a bottle on my bar that's 124 proof. And if somebody walked into here right now and said, I've never had whiskey before, I think I would like to try something, that is never what I'm going to give them.
No.
Ever.
Never.
Because it's going to blow their fucking face off. And they're never going to want to try anything I ever recommend to them ever again. And that's kind of how I feel like Blood Meridian, Child of God, maybe even Suttree. I'm never going to say start there because it's so fucking hard until you realize what I think The Road is probably the best Cormac McCarthy book to walk into if you've never read him and maybe you're never going to read him ever. Because even while No Country for Old Men kind of gives the idea of redemption, I don't think that anything that he does it better than The Road. And I think that's the book that kind of says the whole world is over. There's nothing we can do. Everything is shit, but maybe we can make it better. But
That's what helps.
yeah, but until you understand that that's what he's trying to tell you, until you understand that Cormac is trying to tell you humanity is the way we win, because everything he writes, if you can get past the brutality, everything he writes tells you that humanity, human connection, love for each other, understanding of each other is how we win. If you can't see that in his writing, everything else is just babies over fire.
So if brutality is not a factor, and you're just looking at writing,
there is no. When you're talking about Cormac McCarthy, there is no brutality is not a factor.
right? But I mean, I guess
It's always a factor. It's always a factor. Always.
Besides this one,
He's fucking brutal.
Stella Maris and the Passenger are not really any violence to be.
I haven't read
but
those yet.
Those are different entirely.
good.
But
Yeah,
the rest of them, like, this
it's
is the only one
almost
that's not
like
brutal.
it's almost like they publish them when they're not finished. They're just like, hey, he's not going to last very much longer. Let's just publish them now.
Or-
And he
they
did.
had
Oh,
that
shit.
feeling.
Or are we talking about the writings of a 70-year-old dude that knew that about himself?
Again, wasn't he like 90?
Well, supposedly he actually worked on The Passenger much like for years, many years, like before he was in his 90s and stuff like that. So as far as we know, but at the same time, I didn't get it, and I thought it didn't have an ending, so that was a problem.
I haven't read them
Anyway,
yet. I haven't read those. I haven't read the newest
they're
ones
different.
yet, so I
They're
don't know.
definitely different.
But
Brush
the road,
up on your physics.
But the road was one of the ones he wrote later in his life for his young son when he was like, "Oh my God, what like."
He wrote that for his kid?
Yes,
What a bastard.
he did. He absolutely.
Well, yeah, how did
No, God,
Cormac McCarthy
you
as
didn't
a
know?
father.
He absolutely did. Like he's in a hotel
Here's
with
your
his son.
guidance.
Tolkien wrote The Hobbit.
Here's your
Tolkien wrote The
guidance.
Hobbit for his kid. Cormac McCarthy wrote The
He
Road.
did.
Yeah.
Here's
He
your
was
guidance.
like, what would I do?
You know what a catamite is,
like
son?
if the whole world ended, what would I do with this son of mine that is so young? Like how would I like that's exactly why the road it's dedicated to his son. And that's why. And not his first
Was his son 5?
Yes.
At
Yeah.
time?
Yes.
He had a kid
Yes.
super late. He
Yes.
was like 70 something. And I think the real meaning, put on my English scholar hat for a second, is he was like, I thought it was the end of the world, but my balls had one more in there. I was carrying
Men
the
always
fire.
think
He's
their
like, I can't
balls
believe
have
there
one
was
more in
There was one more in there, and he did though. He had one more in there,
And he was
he's
right.
like, "Holy shit!"
And he was right.
I-
Like my brother.
There-
Never mind.
at the end of the world, at the end of it, there's still hope. There could be some more survivors out there, and he had one last reserve
One
on a
more.
dusty shelf in the back warehouse of his nuts. And he was like, I can't believe that one was still good.
Jimmy, I
just blew-
really, I
he
know
blew the
this
dust,
is,
the
I know
cobwebs
this is
off of
going to
it.
be so fucked up for you to edit.
A lot more
and I'm so
complicated
sorry,
than you
and I'm so
expected.
sorry.
Oh, no, I leave.
No, that's not
I leave
getting
all-
cut out. That's gonna
that
stay
stuff
in
I
there.
leave in.
Oh, yeah, that's staying in. Oh, yeah.
Guys, this has been so much fucking fun.
It has been.
And it's been so nice to have someone on the podcast to actually explain to us what's going
We
on,
have been
because we
faking it for
usually
years.
don't. We usually are trying to
We
figure
have
it
a
out
lot more
ourselves.
of those old man nuts comments usually. It's
No, the
No,
bodacious,
that's every time.
The bodacious tits.
Yeah, sorry, I can't contribute. Not tonight, anyway.
that was a theme in the
That was
seventh
what the
book.
book was about.
It wasn't.
That's
why-
It wasn't.
that's why
it
it was-
wasn't.
Her last
It
name,
wasn't.
Her last name was Hugo because they were huge.
No, it wasn't. It absolutely wasn't.
Y'all are thinking about the other book now.
It was named after her.
It wasn't.
She was the titular character.
Y'all are
and
thinking
it's
about the
there.
other book now. The Seven Wives book.
Yeah, as we're talking about.
All right,
right?
I'm assuming we're done.
First, tell us where. Tell our listeners
Where to
And
find
your
your
li-
podcast.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
There we go.
we are Bitches and Bourbon. That's where we are. And we would love for you to come find us.
Apple,
just go on a
Spotify,
Everything,
quest.
everything.
Like just
Yeah.
go
Everything.
looking for
All
it.
of them. All of them.
wherever fine podcasts
Live
can
journal.
be found.
Yes. Yes.
All right, and tell us what you thought. Send us an email to drunkguysbookclub@gmail.com.
Follow us on Twitter at DrunkGuysBC.
or go to Facebook and Instagram at Drunk Guys Book Club.
And check out the Hopped Up Network, a network of independent beer podcasters. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for hanging out with Ape and Reba on this episode of Bitches and Bourbon.
Make sure to check out the links in the show notes, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Until next time, here's to bad bitches and good bourbon. Cheers.
I mean, you have to like spicy pickle.